Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling. Back in time to wander the silent marble halls and observe the slow, rhythmic life within the imperial palaces of ancient Rome. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. The Palatine Hill rises above the city of Rome not merely as a geographical feature, but as a world apart. To speak of the Imperial Palace is not to describe a single building with a front door and a roof, but rather a sprawling complex of interconnected structures, a labyrinth of stone and garden that dominates the skyline. It is a city within a city, elevated above the dust and the noise of the forum below. Tonight, we find ourselves standing at the foot of this hill, looking up towards the vast substructures that support the Domus Severiana, the extensions built to house the ever-expanding needs of the imperial court. The brickwork here is massive, a testament to the engineering prowess that underpins the luxury above. But we are not staying at the bottom. We are ascending slowly, leaving behind the chaotic energy of the Subura and the busy markets. As we climb the winding paths that lead to the summit of the Palatine, the air itself seems to change. It becomes cooler, cleaner, detached from the smells of cooking fires and crowded tenements that characterize the rest of Rome. Here, the scent is of pine, of laurel, and the faint, dry aroma of sun-baked marble. It is early morning, perhaps the very first hour of daylight, a time the Romans called prima hora. The sun has not yet fully conquered the sky. It is merely a pale suggestion of light in the east, casting long, soft shadows across the cobblestones. The city below is waking up, a low hum of activity beginning to stir. But up here, in the shadow of the Domus Augustana, there is a profound stillness. It is a quietude protected by the Praetorian Guard, a silence purchased with the immense wealth of an empire. We approach the entrance of the palace complex. It is not a fortress, though it is guarded. It is a residence designed to impress, to intimidate, and to isolate. The gates are tall, bronze-faced timber, currently shut tight against the night that is just now retreating. We pass through, unseen, into the outer courtyards. The ground beneath our feet changes from rough paving stones to smooth, precise travertine. The sound of footsteps here is different, sharper, echoing slightly against the high walls that surround us. These walls are plastered and painted in deep reds and ochres, colors that will vibrancy when the sun hits them. But for now, in the gray light of dawn, they appear muted, almost velvety in their texture. Let us walk towards the peristyle, the great colonnaded garden that sits at the heart of the private wing. The columns here are made of Numidian yellow marble, quarried far away in North Africa, and brought here at great expense to hold up the roofs of emperors. If you look closely at the stone, you can see the veins of red and purple running through the yellow, like dried rivers in a desert landscape. The surface is polished to a glass-like finish, cold to the touch. In this early hour, condensation has formed on the marble, tiny droplets of water that catch the weak light. A servant, a slave whose sole duty is the maintenance of this specific corridor, is already awake. He moves with a practiced invisibility, a soft cloth in his hand, wiping away the moisture before his master can ever see it. He does not speak. He does not hum. The silence of the palace is strict law. The garden itself is a masterpiece of control. Nature here is not allowed to be wild. It is tamed, geometric, and precise. The box hedges are trimmed into sharp lines and curves, creating a pattern that mirrors the mosaics on the floors inside. There are fountains, But at this hour, the water pressure has not yet been fully engaged. The water trickles gently, a soothing, repetitive sound that underlines the silence rather than breaking it. Drip, drip, drip. It falls into a basin of white Carrara marble, rippling the reflection of the columns above. In the center of the garden stands a statue, perhaps of Apollo or a previous emperor deified in stone. The statue stares blankly across the courtyard, its eyes carved without pupils, watching the morning mist recede from the manicured grass. Moving inward, we cross the threshold from the semi-open garden into the Domus Flavia, the public wing of the palace. This is where the business of the empire is conducted, but business has not yet begun. The great Aula Regia, the throne room, is empty. It is a cavernous space, vast enough to make any human being feel small and insignificant. The ceiling soars dozens of feet above, coffered and gilded with gold leaf that glimmers faintly in the gloom. The floor is a sprawling expanse of opus sectile, a technique where pieces of colored marble are cut into shapes and fitted together to create intricate geometric patterns. We walk across circles of green porphyry from Sparta, squares of purple porphyry from Egypt, and triangles of white marble from Italy. Each step covers a map of the known world, brought together in stone beneath the emperor's feet. The air inside the Aula Regia is still and cool, trapped between thick walls of concrete and brick faced with marble. There is a smell here of old incense, the lingering smoke of yesterday's sacrifices and yesterday's petitions. It settles in the heavy draperies that hang between the columns, thick purple wool that absorbs sound and light. At the far end of the hall sits the apse, where the throne would be. The throne itself is currently covered with a linen sheet to protect it from dust. It is a raised platform, separated from the rest of the room by a few steps, creating a physical barrier between the ruler and the ruled. In this empty state, the room feels like a stage set waiting for the actors to arrive. It is peaceful, but heavy with expectation. Let us leave the grand public halls and drift deeper into the private quarters. The corridors narrow here. The ceilings are lower, painted with delicate frescoes of birds, vines, and mythological scenes. The colors are lighter, pastel blues, sea greens, and creams. These are the spaces where the imperial family lives, sleeps, and breathes. The floor is warmer here, heated from below by the hypocaust system. Even though it is not winter, the chill of the morning is kept at bay by the gentle warmth radiating up through the mosaic floors. It is a subtle luxury, one that creates a cocoon of comfort against the outside world. We pass a series of doors, all closed. Behind them lie the cubicula, the sleeping chambers. They are small rooms, surprisingly modest compared to the grandeur of the public halls. The focus in these rooms is on rest and darkness. Heavy curtains block out the early light. Inside, the beds are piled high with cushions stuffed with feathers from Germanic geese or wool from Gallic sheep. The bed frames are inlaid with ivory and tortoiseshell, gleaming dully in the dark. The silence here is absolute. The thick walls dampen any noise from the corridors. The only sound is the rhythmic breathing of the sleepers, the rulers of the world lost in dreams that are no different from those of the common man. Outside these rooms, the palace staff is beginning their day. It is a highly organized, hierarchical machine that operates largely out of sight. We see a group of slaves moving silently down a service corridor, carrying amphorae of water and baskets of charcoal. They wear simple tunics of undyed wool, their feet clad in soft felt slippers to muffle their steps. They do not look at each other. Their eyes are on their tasks. They are the cubiculari, the chamberlains who attend to the personal needs of the imperial family. They are preparing the morning rituals. Water must be heated for washing. Oil lamps that have burned down during the night must be refilled or extinguished. Fresh tunics, pressed and perfumed with lavender or saffron, must be laid out. We follow one of these servants into a small antechamber. He sets down a silver basin and begins to polish it with a scrap of leather. The repetitive motion is hypnotic. Rub, pause, rub, pause. He checks his reflection in the metal, ensuring no smudge remains. This basin will hold the water for the emperor's face. It must be perfect. The water is poured from a jug, clear and cold, brought via the Aqua Claudia aqueduct from springs in the distant hills. It splashes softly into the silver bowl, the sound crisp in the quiet room. Beside the basin, the servant places a small jar of tooth powder, made from crushed bones and oyster shells, and a chewing stick of sweet wood. Every object has a specific place, a specific orientation. The order of the objects is as rigid as the order of the legions on the frontier. Moving further into the domestic wing, we find the kitchens. Unlike the sleeping quarters, the kitchens are already a hive of activity, though even here the noise is controlled. The fires were stoked hours ago. The ovens are hot. The smell of baking bread permeates the air, a rich, yeast-filled scent that signals the start of the day. This is the panis siligineus, the finest white bread made from wheat flour sifted through silk. It is not for the guards or the lower servants. It is for the high table. A baker is kneading dough on a massive wooden table, his hands moving in a steady, rolling rhythm. Push, fold, turn, push, fold, turn. Flour dust motes dance in the shaft of light coming through a high window. Next to the baker, another cook is preparing the sauces. He is grinding herbs in a stone mortar. Coriander, mint, rue. The pestle grinds against the stone with a gritty, rhythmic friction. Grind, grind, grind. He adds a splash of garum, the ubiquitous fermented fish sauce, and a drizzle of honey. The mixture is pungent and sweet, a complex aroma that fills the corner of the kitchen. These are the flavors of Rome, the tastes that define the imperial palate. The ingredients have traveled from every corner of the empire to be here, in this room, at this moment. Pepper from India, silphium from Cyrene, dates from Judea. The kitchen is a map of conquest, edible and fragrant. Let us drift away from the kitchens now, back towards the open courtyards where the light is growing stronger. The sun has cleared the horizon, and the golden light is beginning to touch the tops of the columns. The shadows are shortening. The dew on the grass is starting to evaporate, rising as a faint mist. A peacock, kept for its beauty, struts across the lawn. Its feathers drag softly against the grass, a dry, whispering sound. It stops, tilts its head, and lets out a low, mournful cry that echoes briefly against the stone walls before fading into silence. We find ourselves near the library, the bibliotheca. It is a dual structure, one wing for Greek scrolls, one for Latin. The doors are open to let in the morning air and to air out the papyrus and parchment. The shelves line the walls, floor to ceiling, filled with thousands of scrolls. Each scroll is tagged with a small wooden label hanging from the end, swaying slightly in the breeze. The room smells of dry reed, ink, and cedar wood, which is used to protect the books from moths. It is a dry, intellectual scent. A librarian is there, unrolling a scroll on a reading table. The sound of the dry papyrus crinkling is sharp. Crinkle, snap. He is checking the condition of a text, perhaps a history by Livy or a poem by Virgil. He smooths the sheet with a flat hand, examining the black ink for fading. The dust motes here are heavy, suspended in the beams of light that cut through the room like solid bars. We walk out onto a terrace that overlooks the Circus Maximus below. From this height, the great racetrack looks empty and vast. The sand is smooth, raked clean from yesterday's chariot races. The stone seating, capable of holding thousands, is bare. But we are not looking at the track. We are looking at the view. To the south, the Palatine Hill. To the north, the Capitoline with its great temples. Rome lies spread out like a carpet of terracotta tiles and white stone. But up here, on the terrace of the palace, we are removed from it all. There is a gentle breeze blowing, cooling our skin. It rustles the leaves of a potted laurel tree standing in a bronze urn. The rustling is continuous, a soft white noise that masks the distant sounds of the waking city. The architecture of the palace is designed to frame these views, to turn the city into a picture for the emperor's enjoyment. We lean against a balustrade of white marble, warmed by the sun. The stone is smooth under our hands, worn down by centuries of hands resting in this exact spot. We can see the smoke rising from the bathhouses down in the valley, thin gray columns ascending into the blue sky. It is a peaceful scene, deceptively calm. It hides the complexity of the logistics required to keep this hill functioning. The water pipes running inside the walls, the sewers running beneath the floors, the grain shipments arriving at Ostia, the taxes collected in Gaul, all of it exists to support this moment of quiet on the terrace. As we turn back towards the inner sanctum, we notice the changing of the guard. It is not a loud affair. There are no shouting centurions here, no clashing of shields. It is a ceremonial changing of the praetorians stationed at the inner doors. They wear togas over their armor to appear less aggressive within the sacred boundary of the pomerium, though their swords are hidden beneath the folds. Their sandals, the caligae, have hobnails that click rhythmically on the mosaic floor. Click, click, click. They exchange a password in a whisper. One guard steps out, another steps in. The movement is fluid, practiced thousands of times until it is devoid of thought, purely muscle memory. The guard who has just come on duty stands statue still, his eyes fixed on a point on the opposite wall, prepared to stand without moving for hours. We move past him, deeper into the private wing again. The day is officially beginning. We can hear the faint sound of water running in the imperial baths. The hippocaust fires have been stoked higher. The walls themselves seem to hum with a low vibration of heat and energy. A slave is sweeping the floor of a corridor with a broom made of twigs. Swish, swish, swish. The sound is soft, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. He gathers the dust into a small pile, moving backward, never turning his back on the direction where the emperor might appear. It is a dance of servitude, performed in the semi-darkness of the hallway. The sheer scale of the palace becomes apparent as we walk. Room after room, hall after hall. Some are empty, waiting for guests who may never arrive. Some are filled with furniture covered in drapes. We pass a room dedicated solely to the storage of lamps. Thousands of clay and bronze lamps sit on shelves, waiting to be filled and lit when evening comes. The smell of olive oil is thick here, heavy and greasy. A slave is trimming the wicks, snipping the burnt ends with small shears. Snip, snip. The charred bits fall onto a tray. It is an unending task, for the palace must never be dark. Light is a symbol of power, and the emperor is the source of light. We continue our slow walk, observing the textures of the walls. Here, a panel of fresco showing a garden scene, painted with such realism that the birds seem ready to fly off the plaster. There, a section of stucco work, molded into intricate vines and flowers, white on white. The craftsmanship is exquisite, the result of thousands of hours of labor by the finest artisans in the world. Yet, in the silence of the morning, it feels lonely. These walls stand witness to the private lives of men who are treated as gods, absorbing their whispers, their fears, and their secrets. As the sun climbs higher, penetrating the deeper recesses of the palace, the silence of the early morning begins to shift. It does not break. Rather, it evolves into a low, controlled hum of preparation. We move now towards the imperial dressing chambers, the cubiculum where the day's persona is constructed. Here, the air is warm, stiflingly so, as the braziers have been burning throughout the night to keep the dampness at bay. The scent of pine wood smoke mixes with the heavy perfume of oils, frankincense, myrrh, and rose water. In the center of the room stands the tonsor, the imperial barber. He is a man of immense focus. In his hand, he holds a razor of tempered bronze, the edge honed to a terrifying sharpness against a whetstone. There is no lather, no soap used here, only water and oil applied to the skin. The sound of the shave is distinct. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It is a dry, rhythmic sound, amplified by the tension in the room. The barber's breathing is shallow. He holds it in during the crucial strokes. A single nick, a single drop of blood, would be an omen, a disaster that could ripple through the superstitions of the court. He wipes the blade on a linen cloth, leaving a smear of gray stubble and oil, then continues. The rhythm resumes. Scrape, scrape. Nearby, the vestiplici, the slaves responsible for the draping of the toga, stand ready. They hold the garment as if it were a religious relic, and in a way, it is. The imperial toga is not merely clothing. It is a costume of state, a heavy, stifling burden of office. It is woven from the finest Tarentine wool, washed and bleached to a blinding white, save for the broad border of Tyrian purple. This purple is not just a color, it is a substance. Extracted from thousands of crushed murex sea snails, the dye carries a faint, distinctive scent, metallic, briny, earthy. It is the smell of power. The dressing process is slow and ceremonial. The toga is a semicircle of fabric, nearly 6 meters in diameter. It cannot be put on alone. The slaves move in a coordinated dance around the emperor. They drape the wool over the left shoulder, letting the folds fall precisely to the ground. They pull the fabric across the back, under the right arm, and throw the remaining length over the left shoulder again. They adjust the sinus, the pouch-like fold across the chest, and the umbo, the knob of fabric pulled tight at the waist. Every fold is deliberate. Every crease is calculated. The wool is heavy. It restricts movement, forcing the wearer to walk with a slow, stately gait. It is impossible to run in a toga. It is impossible to work in a toga. It is a garment designed for standing still and speaking for governing. Once the dressing is complete, the jewelry is selected. A heavy gold signet ring is slid onto a finger. It clinks softly against the marble table before being picked up. The stone is onyx, carved with the image of a sphinx or the head of Alexander. The weight of the gold is significant, a constant reminder of the wearer's status. The shoes are laced, the calci patrici, made of soft red leather, securing around the calf with intricate straps and crescent-shaped buckles of ivory. The leather creaks softly as the straps are tightened. Creak, pull, creak. We leave the dressing room now, following the invisible path of protocol towards the reception halls. It is time for the salutatio, the morning greeting. This is the daily ritual where the clients of Rome come to pay their respects to their patron, the emperor. But we do not go through the main doors yet. We hover in the antechambers, the waiting rooms where the elite of Rome have been gathering for hours. The antechamber is a sea of white togas. Senators, knights, foreign dignitaries, and high-ranking freedmen stand in clusters. Despite the crowd, the noise is suppressed. Men speak in hushed tones, leaning in close to one another, their heads bowing. The acoustics of the room, with its high vaulted ceiling and marble cladding, turn these whispers into a continuous rolling murmur, like the sound of a distant ocean. Shh, shh. Sandals shuffle on the floor. A cough echoes sharply and is quickly stifled. The air here is thick with body heat and the mixed scents of different perfumes and oils used by the visitors. Some smell of saffron, others of cinnamon or musk. The dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that pierce through the high windows, swirling in the currents of air created by the movement of so many bodies. We watch a senator adjusting his own toga, nervous, smoothing a wrinkle that doesn't exist. He checks the position of his ring. He clears his throat softly. The tension is palpable. Everyone is waiting for the nomenclator. The nomenclator is a slave with a singular, terrifying responsibility. He must know the name of every person who approaches the emperor. He stands by the great doors, a living database of faces and lineages. He holds no scroll. His memory is his tool. He scans the room, his eyes darting from face to face, cataloging, retrieving, organizing. He whispers to an assistant, who nods. The hierarchy of admission is strict. A praetor goes before a quaestor. A consul goes before them all. The order of entry is a map of political favor, shifting daily, invisible to the outsider, but glaringly obvious to everyone in the room. Suddenly, the great bronze doors groan. The sound is deep, resonant, vibrating through the floor. The murmuring stops instantly. The silence returns, absolute and heavy. The doors swing open, revealing the Aula Regia beyond. The light from the throne room spills into the dimmer antechamber, blindingly bright. The nomenclator steps forward and calls out the first name. His voice is projected, clear and monotonous, devoid of emotion. Lucius, Aelius, Sejanus. The figure steps forward, the leather of his sandals slapping softly against the stone threshold. We follow him in, slipping past the guards. The throne room is even more imposing now than it was when it was empty. The emperor sits in the apse, a small figure framed by immense architecture. The distance between the door and the throne is deliberate. The visitor must walk the long expanse of the colored marble floor, exposed, watched by the guards, watched by the attendants, watched by the emperor. It is a walk designed to humble. We drift to the side, behind the colonnade of Phrygian marble, to watch the ritual. It is repetitive. The visitor approaches. He pauses, he bows, he offers a greeting. Ave, Imperator. The emperor nods, or speaks a brief word, or sometimes remains silent. The exchange is minimal. Then the visitor backs away. He does not turn his back until he is well clear of the throne. The next name is called. Titus, Flavius, Clemens. The cycle repeats. Approach, bow, speak, retreat. It is a human conveyor belt of deference. The sound of the names being called becomes a rhythmic chant, marking the passage of time. Outside, the sun is moving across the sky, changing the angle of the shadows in the room. But inside, the ritual is timeless. While the salutatio occupies the main hall, the service corridors behind the walls are active with a different kind of rhythm. We slip through a concealed door into the service wings. Here, the walls are unpainted brick, the floors simple concrete. The air smells of laundry and soap. We find ourselves in the Phalanca, the palace laundry. This is an industrial operation hidden within the residence. Great vats of urine collected for its ammonia stand in rows. Slaves are treading clothes in these vats, marching in place. Splash, step, splash, step. It is hard, rhythmic labor. They hold onto bars suspended from the ceiling to keep their balance as they stomp on the wool and linen tunics. The ammonia smell is sharp, stinging the nose, but the workers seem inured to it. They do not talk. The only sound is the splashing of liquid and the heavy breathing of the men. Nearby, in the rinsing area, water flows constantly into stone basins. Here, the clothes are beaten against the stone to remove the cleaning agents. Thwack, thwack, splash. The water runs clear eventually, carrying the dirt of the palace out into the Cloaca Maxima. The wet fabrics are then wrung out by hand, two men twisting a large sheet of linen in opposite directions until the water streams out. The tension in the fabric makes a straining sound. Creak, drip, drip, drip. The clothes are then taken to the drying courtyard, a space open to the sky but hidden by high walls. Lines of hemp rope are strung across the yard. The wet sheets are hung up, heavy and white. They flap gently in the breeze. Flap, snap, flap. The sun here is intense, reflecting off the white walls, bleaching the fabric even further. A slave walks down the rows with a basket of sulfur, burning small amounts to whiten the wool. The faint, acrid smoke of the sulfur drifts through the drying yard, mingling with the fresh scent of wet linen. We leave the laundry and move towards the records office, the tabularium of the palace. This is a dry, dusty place, far removed from the dampness of the laundry. It is lined with wooden pigeonholes, thousands of them, filling the walls like a honeycomb. In each hole sits a scroll or a wax tablet. This is the memory of the household. Here are the accounts of every amphora of wine consumed, every bushel of wheat bought, every coin paid to a soldier. The scribes sit at high desks, hunched over their work. They use reed pens dipped in ink made from soot and gum arabic. The scratching of the pens is continuous. Scritch, scratch, scritch. It sounds like the scurrying of insects. They are copying lists, tallying numbers, verifying inventories. A scribe pauses to sharpen his pen with a small knife, shaving the reed to a fine point. Slice, slice. He dips it into the inkwell, a small click as the reed hits the pottery, and resumes writing. The dust in the tabularium is different. It is the dust of dry papyrus and crumbling wax. The light here is dim, preserved to protect the documents from fading. Oil lamps burn low on the desks, casting flickering yellow circles of light on the columns of numbers. We look over the shoulder of a scribe. He is recording the delivery of snow. Yes, snow. Brought down from the mountains, packed in straw, insulated, and transported to Rome to cool the emperor's wine. The logistics of this single luxury require a network of wagons, mules, and men, all recorded here in this quiet, dusty room, reduced to a line of ink on a fragile sheet of plant fiber. We drift out of the tabularium and find ourselves on a balcony overlooking the internal garden of the Domus Augustana. It is mid-morning now. The gardeners are at work. They are using shears to trim the box hedges. Snip, snip, snip. The sound is sharp and clean. They are shaping the bushes into animals, topiary figures of bears, lions, and ships. The scent of cut leaves, green and sap-filled, rises up to the balcony. It is a fresh, sharp smell that cuts through the heat of the day. A slave is watering the flower beds with a watering pot made of pottery sprinkled with tiny holes. The water falls like rain, pattering on the broad leaves of the acanthus plants. Patter, patter, patter. The soil turns dark and rich as it absorbs the moisture. Bees are buzzing around the rosemary bushes, a low, droning hum that is the very sound of a warm Mediterranean morning. Bzzz. The activity is peaceful, slow, and endlessly repetitive. The garden must look the same today as it did yesterday, and as it will tomorrow. Change is not welcome here. Only perfection is allowed. We descend the stairs, our hands trailing on the smooth marble banister. The stone is cool, despite the growing heat outside. We are heading towards the lower levels, the substructures that anchor the palace to the hill. The air gets cooler as we go down. The light fades. We are entering the service tunnels, the cryptoporticus. These are long, vaulted corridors, semi-subterranean, lit by small windows high up near the ceiling. The cryptoporticus is the artery of the palace. It allows the movement of goods and slaves without disturbing the tranquility of the upper levels. The floor here is patterned with black and white mosaic, simple geometric shapes. The echo is strong. We hear footsteps approaching long before we see anyone. A group of slaves is carrying a litter, moving quickly but smoothly. The litter is curtained. Who is inside? A mistress avoiding the sun? A sick child? A secret visitor? They pass us in a rush of wind and soft footsteps, vanishing around a corner into the gloom. The walls of the tunnel are covered in plaster, and here and there we see graffiti scratched into the surface, the idle scratchings of guards and servants waiting for their orders. A name, a date, a caricature of a centurion with a big nose, a drawing of a gladiator. Felix was here. These are the tiny, unauthorized voices of the palace, etched into the imperial plaster, hidden in the dark. We run a finger over the scratches. They are rough against the smooth wall. They feel human in a place that is designed to be superhuman. We continue along the tunnel, the temperature dropping further. We are approaching the storage cellars. The smell changes to one of earth, aging wine, and dry grain. We pass heavy wooden doors, barred and locked. Behind them lie the reserves of the empire, amphorae of Falernian wine, aging for decades, jars of olive oil from Baetica, sacks of spices from the east. We stop by a door that is slightly ajar. Inside, the darkness is almost total, but the smell of apples is overwhelming. Thousands of apples, stored on shelves in the cool dark, releasing their sweet, fermenting scent into the stagnant air. It is a smell of autumn preserved in the heart of summer. Deep in these foundations, the silence is heavy. The noise of the city, the noise of the court, none of it reaches here. There is only the drip of water from a condensation channel. Drip, drip. The interval is long. The suspense of the sound is hypnotic. We stand in the cool dark, listening to the slow heartbeat of the palace's plumbing. This is the underbelly, the hidden support system that holds up the marble fantasy above. As we turn back to ascend, we notice the brickwork. Broad, flat Roman bricks, bound by mortar as hard as stone. The stamps on the bricks identify the kiln and the consulship year. Some of these bricks were laid 100 years ago. They have held up the weight of emperors, madness, and glory without shifting a millimeter. They are the silent, enduring reality beneath the fleeting pageantry of the court. We begin the climb back up towards the light, leaving the cool, apple-scented dark behind, ready to see what the midday sun reveals in the world above. We emerge from the cool, earth-scented depths of the cryptoporticus back into the upper world. The contrast is immediate and physical. The midday sun is now high directly overhead, a blazing disk of white heat that bleaches the colors of the courtyard. The shadows have retreated, hiding directly beneath the columns and the statues, leaving the open spaces exposed and shimmering. The air is still. The morning breeze has died down, replaced by a heavy suspended heat that seems to press against the skin. It is the 6th hour, the time when Rome pauses. The frantic energy of the morning salutatio has dissipated. The senators have gone home. The petitioners have been dismissed. The palace enters a phase of intimate, drowsy quietude. We move towards the private baths of the imperial family, a sanctuary within a sanctuary. The entrance is marked by a heavy curtain of woven tapestry, kept damp with water to cool the air that passes through it. We brush past the heavy fabric, feeling the moisture on our hands, and enter the apoditerium, the changing room. The room is lined with marble benches, cool and smooth. Along the walls are niches, square cubbies where clothes are stored. It is quiet here, a hushed antechamber to the ritual of cleansing. A slave takes the emperor's toga, folding it with reverence, placing it on a cedar shelf. The sound of the heavy wool settling is soft. Thump. The room smells of lavender and dried flowers, kept in bowls to ward off the stale scent of sweat. The light comes from high, clear-story windows, filtered through thick glass that turns the harsh sunlight into a milky, diffuse glow. We proceed into the tepidarium, the warm room. There is no water here, only warm air. The floor is heated from below, a gentle warmth that seeps through the sandals and into the soles of the feet. We sit on a bench of pink marble. The walls are decorated with mosaics of marine scenes, dolphins, tritons, and nereids riding sea monsters. The tiles are tiny, thousands of glass squares in shades of azure, turquoise, and sea green. In the dim light, they glitter faintly, giving the illusion of being underwater. We simply sit. The purpose of this room is to acclimatize the body, to open the pores slowly. The silence is thick, broken only by the distant muffled sound of a furnace being stoked deep underground. After a time, the move is made to the caldarium, the hot room. As the door opens, a cloud of steam rolls out, white and thick, carrying the scent of eucalyptus and mint. Inside, the heat is intense. The air is heavy with moisture. It condenses on the walls, running down the painted plaster in slow, erratic rivulets. Drip, slide, drip. The ceiling is vaulted and fluted, designed to channel the condensation down the sides so it does not drip on the bathers. We watch a single drop travel the length of a groove, gathering speed before merging with a pool of water on the floor. In the center is the alveus, a hot water plunge bath. The water is still, emitting a low, wavering steam. An attendant approaches with a flask of oil. He pours it into his hands, thick, golden olive oil from the groves of Sabina. He begins to massage the oil into the skin. The sound is rhythmic, a wet, sliding friction. Rub, slide, rub. The oil mixes with sweat, coating the body in a glistening sheen. This is the cleansing agent of Rome. There is no soap here. The oil binds with the dirt and the dust of the city. Then comes the strigil. It is a curved metal tool, made of bronze or silver, shaped like a sickle with a dull edge. The attendant presses the metal against the oiled skin and scrapes. Scrape, flick, scrape, flick. It removes the oil, the sweat, and the dirt in long, satisfying strokes. The sound is distinctive, metal against skin, a dull, rasping noise that echoes slightly in the vaulted room. The scraped mixture is flicked onto the floor, where another slave immediately washes it away with a bucket of hot water. Splash, swish. The floor is kept obsessively clean. The heat eventually becomes too much, a drowsy weight that slows the mind. It is time for the frigidarium, the cold room. We step out of the steam and into a room with a high dome, open at the top to the sky, the oculus. Beneath it lies a circular pool of cold water. The transition is shocking. The body is plunged into the chill. The breath catches. The water is clear. So clear you can see the mosaic of a Medusa head on the bottom of the pool, her snakes writhing in the refraction of the ripples. The sound of the water here is sharp, splashing against the marble rim. Splash. It echoes loudly, a crisp, bright sound after the muffled heaviness of the steam room. We float for a moment, weightless, staring up at the circle of blue sky framed by the concrete dome. A bird flies across the opening, a fleeting silhouette, silent and high. Clean, oiled and cooled, the emperor retires. It is the time of the meridiatio, the midday siesta. The palace shuts down. We walk through the corridors, and they are empty. The slaves have retreated to their quarters or to shady corners of the courtyards to doze. We enter a private dining room, a triclinium used for the midday meal, the prandium. It is a light meal, a plate of figs, purple and bursting with sweetness, a piece of cheese, a hard pecorino, a loaf of bread, a cup of wine, heavily diluted with water and snow. The room is darkened. The heavy wooden shutters have been pulled closed against the glare of the sun. The only light comes from the thin cracks between the slats, projecting narrow beams of dust-filled light across the floor. The dust motes swirl in the turbulence of the air, slow galaxies of microscopic matter. Swirl, float, swirl. The room is cooler than the outside, but still warm. The silence is profound. It is a sleepy, heavy silence. We can hear the buzzing of a single housefly, circling lazily in the center of the room. Bzzz. It lands on the table, walks a few steps, then takes off again. Bzzz. The sound emphasizes the stillness. We leave the dining room and wander towards the schoolrooms, located in a quiet wing of the palace. Here, the imperial children, the heirs and their cousins, are kept during the heat of the day. Education does not stop for the sun, though it slows down. We peek through a doorway. The room is simple, furnished with wooden benches and a high chair for the teacher, the grammaticus. He is a Greek, an elderly man with a beard that reaches his chest. He holds a scroll of Homer in one hand and a cane in the other. The children sit hunched over their wax tablets. The tabula is a wooden frame filled with black beeswax. They hold styluses, sharp instruments of bronze or bone. They are practicing their Greek handwriting. Scratch, pause, scratch. The stylus cuts into the soft wax, pushing it aside to form letters. Alpha, beta, gamma. If a mistake is made, they use the flat end of the stylus to smooth the wax back over, erasing the error. Rub, rub, smooth. The smell of the room is distinct: warm beeswax, old wood, and the faint, dry scent of papyrus. The teacher begins to recite. His voice is a low drone, rhythmic and monotonous. Menan aide thea, Peleiadeo Achilleos. Sing, goddess, of the rage of Peleus's son Achilles. The children repeat the line back to him. Their voices are disjointed, mumbling, lacking the fire of the epic. They are tired. Their eyelids are heavy. One boy drops his stylus. It clatters loudly on the floor. Clack. The teacher stops. He taps his cane against his chair. Tap, tap. The boy picks up the stylus. The recitation resumes. The rhythm returns, a hypnotic chant of ancient verses that fills the drowsy afternoon air. We leave the schoolroom and step out onto a shaded colonnade. The view from here looks down into the internal garden, the viridarium. The garden is still. The leaves of the laurel trees are motionless. The birds have stopped singing, taking refuge from the heat. The only movement is the heat haze shimmering above the stone paths, distorting the air like water. It makes the statues look as if they are trembling slightly. In the corner of the colonnade, a mosaicist is working quietly. He is repairing a section of the floor where the tesserae have come loose. He sits cross-legged, a bag of colored stones beside him. He selects a small cube of black basalt. He applies a dab of mortar with a small trowel. Scrape. He presses the stone into place. Press. He taps it down with a small hammer to ensure it is level. Tap, tap. He selects a white stone. Scrape, press, tap, tap. It is an infinitely slow process. A single square foot of floor might take him days. He does not rush. He is paid to create eternity, not speed. The sound of his little hammer is the only percussion in the silent afternoon. We walk further, reaching the Imperial aviaries. These are large cages made of copper mesh, housing exotic birds from the far reaches of the empire. Parrots from India, bright green and red. Pheasants from Colchis. They are perched on branches, heads tucked under their wings, sleeping. Occasionally, a parrot shifts, its claws scratching against the wood. Scritch. It lets out a low, croaking muttering, as if talking in its sleep, then falls silent again. The smell here is musky, a mix of feathers, grain, and dried fruit. The copper mesh is hot to the touch, baking in the sun. Beyond the aviary is the water organ, the hydraulis. It stands silent now, a complex machine of bronze pipes and pumps, but a technician is performing maintenance on it. He is greasing the leather valves with animal fat to keep them supple. He moves with extreme care, disassembling a bronze piston. The metal parts clink softly as he lays them on a cloth. Clink, clink. He wipes a cylinder clean. The smell of the grease is thick and heavy. This instrument, when played, can roar like a lion or sing like a flute, but right now, it is just a collection of cold metal parts being tended to in the quiet shade. We find ourselves moving towards the women's quarters, the gyneceum. The atmosphere here is different. It is softer, more enclosed. The curtains are drawn. The air is perfumed with heavy scents of musk and amber. We see a room where weaving is taking place. This is a traditional virtue of the Roman matron, even an empress. A large vertical loom stands in the center. The warp threads hang down, weighted with clay loom weights. The weights click together softly when the threads are moved. Click, click. A slave girl sits behind the loom, passing the shuttle back and forth. Swish, catch, swish, catch. She beats the weft thread up with a wooden comb. Thump, thump. The fabric growing on the loom is a fine silk, dyed a soft saffron yellow. The rhythm of the loom is steady, almost musical. It is a heartbeat of domestic industry. Another woman sits nearby, spinning wool. She holds a distaff wound with raw wool in one hand and a drop spindle in the other. She gives the spindle a twist. It spins rapidly, descending towards the floor, twisting the fibers into thread. Whir. When it reaches the floor, she stops it, winds the thread, and starts again. Whir. It is a motion as old as civilization, performed here in the palace with spindles made of ivory and gold. The heat of the day is beginning to break, just slightly. The sun has moved past its zenith and is starting its long descent towards the Tyrrhenian Sea. The shadows are beginning to lengthen again, stretching out from the columns, reclaiming the courtyards inch by inch. The stillness of the Meridiatio is ending. The palace is about to wake up for the second half of the day. The business of government is over, but the business of leisure, of the cena, the great dinner, is about to begin. We can hear the first stirrings of the kitchen staff, the clatter of pots, the chopping of wood, a cart rumbling in the distance on the service road, the deep, resonant sound of a gong being struck somewhere in the complex signals the end of the rest period. The sound vibrates through the stone floors, a low-frequency wave that travels up through our feet. Goong! It fades slowly, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. The day turns a corner. The light shifts from the blinding white of noon to a warmer, more golden hue. The marble walls seem to soften. The stone breathes out the heat it has absorbed. We stand by a window looking west. The dust in the air catches the changing light, turning into a golden haze. Below us, the roofs of Rome are baking. But here, inside the thick walls, the temperature remains constant, controlled, indifferent to the world outside. We turn away from the window, ready to explore the evening rituals, the lighting of the lamps, and the elaborate theater of the imperial dinner. The transition from afternoon to evening in the palace is not marked by a sudden burst of noise, but by a shift in the quality of light and a change in the texture of the air. The golden hour, the hora duodecima, descends upon the Palatine. The sun is now dipping low over the Janiculum Hill across the river, casting long horizontal beams of amber light that cut through the colonnades, illuminating the dust motes in the air like suspended gold dust. It is time for the lighting of the lamps. This is a monumental task, a daily logistical operation that battles the encroaching night. We stand in a corridor and watch the lucernari, the slaves responsible for the light, begin their rounds. They carry long tapers, waxed wicks burning with a steady yellow flame. They move from niche to niche, from pedestal to pedestal. The lamps themselves are objects of art. Some are simple terracotta discs with a single spout. Others are elaborate bronze statues, a foot, a dolphin, a grotesque mask, holding multiple wicks. The oil has already been poured, a task completed hours ago. Now, the flame must be transferred. The slave reaches up. He touches his taper to the wick. A small sound of ignition. The flame catches, wavers for a second, then steadies into a teardrop of light. He moves to the next. Touch. Faft. Steady. He does this hundreds of times, thousands of times. The smell of burning oil begins to permeate the corridors. It is a thick, organic scent, heavier than the perfumes of the day. As the sun sets, the palace becomes a galaxy of these tiny, flickering stars. They do not banish the dark completely. Rather, they push it back into the corners, creating a world of deep shadows and warm, dancing pools of illumination. The shadows of the columns stretch out across the floor, moving slightly as the flames flicker in the draft. We follow the light towards the triclinium, the great dining hall. Tonight, the dinner will be held in the Senatio Iovis, the dining room of Jupiter. It is a vast hall with an apse at one end and columns of Pavonazzetto marble, white with purple veins. The preparation of the room is nearly complete. The triclinari, the dining room staff, are making the final adjustments. The focal point is the sigma, the semicircular couch where the diners will recline. It is designed so that everyone faces the center, towards the food and the entertainment. The couch is not a single piece of furniture, but a masonry platform built into the floor, covered with mattresses. These mattresses are stuffed with reeds from the Nile, providing a firm yet yielding support. Over the mattresses, the slaves are spreading the terralia, the coverlets. These are made of Tyrian purple silk, embroidered with gold thread in patterns of vine leaves and grapes. A slave smooths a wrinkle in the silk. He runs his hand over the fabric, ensuring it is perfectly taut. Brush, smooth. He steps back, examines the angle, and steps forward again to adjust a corner. Tuck. The cushions are placed next. They are cylindrical, meant to support the left elbow of the diners. They are positioned with geometric precision, equidistant from one another. The arrangement is a study in symmetry. In the center of the couch stands the table, the mensa. It is round, standing on 3 legs carved in the shape of lion paws. The wood is citrus wood, imported from Mauritania. It is arguably the most expensive material in the room, more valuable than the gold or the marble. The grain of the wood is swirled and knotted, polished to such a high gloss that it reflects the ceiling frescoes above. A servant is polishing it one last time with a soft woolen cloth. Rub, circle, rub, circle. The wood gleams, deep and honey-colored. On the sideboards, the silver service, the argentum escarium, is laid out. This is not just cutlery, it is the empire's wealth on display. There are heavy silver platters, some weighing 50 pounds or more, etched with scenes from the Odyssey. There are deep bowls for sauce. There are tiny spoons, cochlearia, with pointed handles used for extracting snails or shellfish from their shells. A slave counts them. 1, 2, 3. He lines them up, ensuring the handles are perfectly parallel. The silver catches the light of the oil lamps, flashing white against the deepening gloom of the room. We hear the sound of water again. It is the mixing of the wine. In a corner, the pancerna, the cupbearer, is preparing the crater, a massive mixing bowl. Romans rarely drink wine neat. It is considered barbaric. It must be mixed with water. The water is poured from an amphora into the bowl. Splash, gurgle. Then the wine, a dark, heavy Falernian that has aged for 10 years, is added. The liquids swirl together, turning a deep, translucent ruby red. But the preparation is not finished. The wine must be strained. It is poured through a column, a metal sieve filled with snow. Yes, the snow we saw in the records office earlier. It has been brought here, packed tight. The warm wine hits the cold snow. Hiss. A faint sound of temperature shock. The wine trickles through, chilled and diluted, dropping into the serving jugs. The smell of the wine opens up as it is aerated. Notes of blackberries, resin, and honey fill the corner of the room. The guests are beginning to arrive. We do not see them yet, but we hear them. The sound of litters being set down in the courtyard outside. Thump. Scuff. The murmur of voices. The guests are removing their outdoor shoes, the calcé, and putting on their soleil, light indoor sandals or slippers. A slave is there to assist, unbuckling straps, taking the shoes away to be cleaned. The guests wash their feet in silver basins before entering the dining room. It is a ritual of purification. Splash, rinse, dry. They enter the triclinium. The fabric of their dining robes rustles softly. Swish, swish. These are the synthesis loose, colorful garments worn only for dinner, replacing the heavy white togas. One guest wears a synthesis of emerald green, another of deep saffron. They approach the couch. The allocation of seats is a rigid protocol. The host sits at the top corner. The guest of honor sits next to him. The lowest-ranking guest sits at the end. They climb onto the couch, leaning on their left elbows, arranging their limbs. It takes time to get comfortable. Cushions are punched and reshaped. Whump. Pat. Once settled, the washing of hands begins. Slaves move around the outside of the couch with jugs of scented water and towels. They pour water over the guests' hands. Trickle. Splash. The guests rub their fingers together. They dry them on the linen towels. This is crucial, for they will eat with their fingers. There are no forks here. The hands must be spotless. The first course, the gustaccio, is brought in. It is not a meal yet. It is a collection of appetizers designed to stimulate the appetite. A procession of slaves enters, carrying large trays on their shoulders. They move in step, a choreographed line. they lower the trays onto the round tables. The food is presented as a landscape. There are eggs, hard-boiled and sliced, garnished with pine nuts. There are olives from Spain, green and black, glistening with oil. There are dormice, fattened in terracotta jars, roasted and dipped in honey and poppy seeds. They look small and dark on the silver platter. There are sow's udders, boiled in milk. There are sea urchins, fresh and briny. The guests reach out. The conversation is low, polite. The sound of eating is quiet. The breaking of an eggshell. Crack. The chewing of an olive. The sipping of wine from shallow silver cups. Sip. The cup is placed back on the table. Clink. A slave immediately steps forward to refill it. The cup must never be empty. The flow of wine is continuous, like the flow of the aqueducts. We drift away from the conversation, which is dull and centered on the price of land in Campania, or the quality of the latest wheat shipment from Egypt. We look instead at the walls. The frescoes here depict a garden, similar to the one outside, but eternal. Trees laden with golden apples, birds frozen in mid-flight. In the flickering lamplight, the painted leaves seem to rustle. The illusion is intentional. The room is designed to feel like a bower, a shelter from the reality of the city. Music begins. It is not a full orchestra, but a single lyre player standing in the corner. He plucks the strings with a plectrum. Pluck, hum, pluck. The notes are widely spaced, melancholic and soft. It is background music, meant to soothe, not to distract. The vibration of the strings hangs in the air, mingling with the smell of the food and the oil lamps. Occasionally, a flute player joins in, playing a low, breathy melody that weaves around the lyre's notes. Two, two. Between the courses, the tables are cleared. This is not just a matter of removing plates. The slaves wipe the table down with sponges. They sweep the floor of any crumbs that may have fallen. Sweep, sweep. Romans are superstitious about food falling on the floor. It belongs to the dead, to the spirits. It must be swept away quickly. A slave sprinkles sawdust dyed with saffron and vermilion onto the floor to absorb any spilled wine and to release a pleasant scent when stepped upon. The main course, the prima mensa, arrives. This is the heavy lifting of the meal. A whole roasted boar is carried in on a massive tray. It is so heavy that 4 slaves are required to carry it. The boar has been stuffed with live thrushes. When the carver slices into the meat, the birds are supposed to fly out. But tonight, for the sake of quiet, the birds are merely roasted inside. The carver, the scissor, approaches. He flourishes his knife. He does not hack, he performs surgery. He slices the meat into bite-sized chunks, as the guests are reclining and cannot cut the meat themselves. Slice, sever, slice. The knife moves with a fluid, practiced grace. The meat falls away from the bone. Other dishes appear. Fish from the Tiber, swimming in a sauce of herbs. A hare, decorated with wings to look like Pegasus. The creativity of the cooks is endless, bordering on the absurd. But here in the dining room, it is received with mild nods of approval. The visual presentation is as important as the taste. The food is sculpture. As the meal progresses, the light outside fades completely. The windows are now black squares, reflecting the interior of the room. The world outside has ceased to exist. There is only the warm bubble of the triclinium. The heat from the lamps rises, collecting near the ceiling. The air grows heavier, more somber. The guests are eating slower now. The wine is having its effect. The conversation slows down. The pauses between sentences become longer. A reader stands up. It is common to have literature read during the meal. He holds a scroll of poetry. He begins to read in a monotone voice, distinct from the conversation. Vivamus, mia lesbia, atque amamus. Let us live, my lesbia, and let us love. The words float over the diners. Some listen. Others stare blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. The reader does not dramatize. He acts as a human audio vessel for the text. His voice is another layer of texture in the room, like the silk of the cushions or the grain of the wood. We move out of the dining room to the terrace. The air here is cooling rapidly. The night has fully taken hold of Rome. Below us, the city is a vast darkness, punctuated by thousands of tiny points of light. The lamps of the tenements, the torches of the night watch. It looks like a reflection of the starry sky above. The noise of the city has changed. The roar of the day is gone, replaced by the bark of a dog, the distant rattle of a cart, for heavy wagons are only allowed to move at night, and the hooting of an owl from the Imperial Gardens. The moon is rising, a pale crescent over the Colosseum. Its light turns the marble of the palace blue and gray. The shadows are stark and hard-edged. We walk along the terrace, our sandals making no sound on the dew-dampened stone. We are alone here. The feasting is inside, behind closed doors. Here, there is only the vast, indifferent night and the silent stones of the empire. We approach the guard post at the edge of the terrace. The guard is leaning against a pillar. He is awake, but relaxed. His spear rests against his shoulder. He watches the city below, a silent sentinel. He does not turn as we pass. He is part of the architecture, a statue that breathes. We can hear the leather of his armor creak as he shifts his weight. Creak. He exhales a plume of breath into the cool air. Back inside, the dinner is transitioning to the commissatio, the drinking bout that follows the meal. But we will not stay for the debauchery. We are interested in the quiet machinery of the night. We move towards the service quarters again. The kitchen is in chaos, but a controlled chaos. The dirty dishes are returning, piles of silver plates smeared with sauce. Slaves are scraping the leftovers into buckets for the animals. Scrape, clatter. The water in the washing basins is turning dark and greasy. The steam rises from the hot water, filling the kitchen with a humid, food-scented fog. The fires in the great ovens are being banked down for the night. A stoker rakes the ashes over the coals. Rake, scritch, rake. The orange glow of the embers fades to a dull red, then to gray. The heat radiating from the brickwork will keep the kitchen warm until morning. The bakers are already asleep, resting for their pre-dawn shift. We walk through the corridors of the slaves' dormitories. These are not the spacious halls of the palace proper. They are narrow, low-ceilinged tunnels. The doors are open for ventilation. We hear the sounds of hundreds of people sleeping, snoring, heavy breathing, the rustling of straw mattresses. This is the engine of the palace, powering down for a few brief hours. The smell here is human: sweat, garlic, and unwashed wool. It is the smell of reality, hidden behind the marble facade. We return to the upper levels, to the silence of the library. The lamps here have been extinguished. The room is dark, save for the moonlight streaming through the high windows. The scrolls are asleep in their pigeonholes. The dust has settled. The silence is heavy, pressing against the ears. It is a library of ghosts, of words waiting to be read. We sit for a moment in the dark, listening to the nothingness. Then, a sound. The vigils, the night watchmen, are starting their patrol. We hear the rhythmic striking of a staff against the stone floor. Thump, thump, thump. It gets louder, then passes the door, then fades away down the corridor. It is the heartbeat of the security state, a reminder that even in sleep, the palace is watched. The emperor has retired to his chambers. The guests are leaving. We hear the confused noise of the departure in the distance. Servants calling for litters, the stumbling of intoxicated men, the soothing words of their slaves. "This way, master. Careful, master." The voices drift up from the courtyard, hollow and faint, before being swallowed by the night. The palace is returning to itself. The performance is over. The stage is being cleared. The night is reclaiming the hill. The silence of the palace at night is not merely an absence of noise. It is a heavy, physical presence. It presses against the eardrums, amplified by the vastness of the empty halls. We are now in the Cubiculum Augusti, the imperial bedroom. It is a small room, deliberately so, easier to heat and easier to guard. The heavy tapestries of Babylonian weave, thick and dark, are drawn tight across the entrance, blocking out the last flickers of the corridor lamps. Inside, the darkness is nearly total. A single nightlight, a small lamp of translucent alabaster, burns in the corner. The alabaster filters the flame, turning it into a soft, milky glow that barely reaches the bed. It casts no hard shadows, only a vague amber twilight. The air is still, scented with the dried verbena stuffed into the mattresses to encourage sleep. The emperor sleeps. The master of the known world, whose word can move legions from the Rhine to the Euphrates, is now just a rhythmic sound of breathing in the dark. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. He lies on a bed frame of citrus wood, inlaid with tortoise shell that gleams dully in the low light. The coverlets are drawn up to his chin. He is alone in the bed. The empress sleeps in her own quarters, separated by a series of corridors and guards. This solitude is a precaution as much as a preference. Directly outside the curtain, on the mosaic floor of the threshold, lies the cubicularius. He is the body servant, the final line of defense. He sleeps on a simple pallet of straw. He is technically asleep, but it is a light, wary slumber. At the slightest sound, a footstep, a rustle of fabric, a change in the emperor's breathing, his eyes will snap open. He is the loyal dog at the door. We step over him, careful not to disturb the air, and move back into the corridor. The Praetorian guards are stationed at every intersection of the private wing. At night, they do not patrol. They stand. They are statues of flesh and bronze. The light from the distant lamps catches the curve of a helmet, the edge of a shield. They stand with their feet apart, weight evenly distributed, a stance they can maintain for hours. They do not speak. They do not look at each other. They stare into the middle distance, watching for movement in the shadows. Every few hours, a tesserarius, the officer of the watch, makes his rounds. He moves silently, his sandals padded with felt. He approaches a guard. They lean in close. The password, the tessera, is whispered. It changes every night. Venus, Victrix, or Fortuna, Redux. The whisper is barely audible, a breath of air against metal. Whisper, nod. The officer moves on. The guard remains. It is a ritual of paranoia that keeps the empire secure while it dreams. We leave the tension of the guarded corridors and descend. Down the marble staircases, past the silent kitchens, down into the bowels of the hill. We are going to the hypocostum, the heating system. While the palace sleeps, the fires must be kept burning. The warmth we felt in the floors above begins here, in the dark, smoky, subterranean chambers. The heat hits us first. It is a dry, dusty heat. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and charcoal. We are in the Praefurnium, the furnace room. It is a low-ceilinged space, the walls blackened by centuries of soot. Piles of wood, oak for a slow burn, pine for a quick heat, are stacked against the walls. The slaves here are naked except for loincloths. Their bodies glisten with sweat and soot. They look like demons in the underworld, but they are merely the engineers of comfort. One slave is tending the fire. He uses a long iron rake to push a log deep into the furnace mouth. Scrape, push. Sparks fly up, swirling in the draft, orange fireflies in the dark. Crackle, pop. The fire roars softly, a continuous, hungry sound. The heat from this fire does not go up a chimney. It is drawn into a space beneath the floor of the rooms above. The floor is suspended on pillars of brick, the pilae. We can see them through the arch of the furnace, rows and rows of brick columns, like a miniature forest of stone. The hot air flows between these columns, warming the ceiling of the basement, which is the floor of the palace. It then rises through tubulae, hollow rectangular bricks built inside the walls of the rooms. It is a masterpiece of engineering. The smoke and the fire stay down here. Only the pure, invisible heat rises. A slave checks the temperature by touching the brick arch of the furnace. He knows by the feel of the clay if the fire is too hot or too cold. If it is too hot, the mosaic floors above might crack. If too cold, the emperor might wake with a chill. He adjusts the airflow by moving a stone damper. Grind, clunk. The roar of the fire changes pitch. He wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of clean skin in the soot. We watch the flames for a while. The rhythm of the fire is hypnotic. It breathes. It dances. It consumes. This is the heart of the palace, pumping heat through the veins of the building. It is a dirty, hard job, performed in the dark so that the people above never have to think about where the warmth comes from. Leaving the furnace room, we move laterally through the service tunnels to the Castellum Aquae, the water distribution center of the palace. The noise here is different. It is the sound of rushing water. The Aqua Claudia, one of the great aqueducts of Rome, terminates here. The water arrives after a journey of 40 miles from the springs in the Sublacensis Mountains. It enters a massive lead tank, the calyx. The pressure is immense. The water churns and boils as it hits the tank. Roar, splash, gurgle. But as it fills the reservoir, it calms down. The sediment, the sand and the pebbles, settles to the bottom. The clean water rises to the top and flows out into a series of lead pipes. These pipes are stamped with the name of the emperor and the name of the plumber, the plumbarius, who made them. We trace the lines of the pipes along the wall. They vary in size. The largest ones go to the baths. The medium ones go to the fountains. The smallest ones go to the private quarters. The lead is cold and sweating with condensation. We run a finger along a pipe. It is wet and slippery. Drip, drip. There is a maintenance worker here too. He is checking for leaks. He holds a lamp close to a joint in the pipe. He listens. A hiss would indicate a crack. He moves slowly, inspecting every inch of the metal. The sound of the water moving through the pipes is a constant low vibration that hums in the walls. It is the sound of civilization. As long as the water flows, Rome lives. We exit the water complex and find ourselves in an open courtyard on the eastern side of the Palatine. The air is fresh here, cleansed by the night dew. We look up. The sky is a deep, velvety black, scattered with more stars than modern eyes ever see. The constellations are sharp and clear. Orion hangs low in the sky. The Pleiades are a tight cluster of diamond dust. On the roof of the Domus Flavia, a figure is standing. It is the court astrologer. He is wrapped in a thick wool cloak against the chill. He stands next to a bronze instrument, an armillary sphere, a model of the celestial globe. He is aligning the rings with the stars. He holds a tablet and a stylus. He is not looking for beauty. He is looking for signs. A comet? A conjunction of Mars and Saturn. He notes the position of the moon. Scratch. Scratch. He murmurs calculations to himself. In Rome, the movement of the heavens is matters of state. A bad omen could stop a war or start a purge. The astrologer is the night watchman of fate. He tracks the slow clockwork motion of the universe while the city sleeps. The silence around him is absolute, disconnected from the earth, connected only to the vast, silent turning of the spheres. We leave him to his stars and wander back into the public halls. The Aula Regia, the throne room, is terrifying at night. It is too big, too empty. The moonlight streams in through the high windows, creating parallelograms of blue light on the floor. The porphyry columns look black in the dark. The throne in the apse is a silhouette, a darker shadow within the shadows. Our footsteps echo loudly here, no matter how softly we tread. Tap, echo, tap, echo. The sound bounces off the marble walls, returning to us a second later. It feels as if we are being followed by our own ghosts. We stop. The echo stops. The silence rushes back in to fill the void. We approach the statues that line the walls, gods and heroes, Hercules leaning on his club, Bacchus holding a bunch of grapes. In the daylight, they are art. At night, they seem to possess a strange, frozen life. The moonlight hits the face of a marble bust of Augustus. The eyes are blank, but the expression is severe. The shadows in the carved pupils make him look as if he is watching us. We move past him, feeling the weight of his stone gaze. We find a side door that leads to the archives of the imperial household. Not the grand state records we saw earlier, but the domestic logs. A slave is awake here, sorting through the day's receipts. He sits in a pool of yellow lamplight, surrounded by walls of darkness. He is tired. His head nods. He jerks awake, dips his pen, and writes a line. Dip, scritch. He is recording the breakage of a wine cup. One crystal goblet, broken by the slave Euryalus. Value, 50 denarii. He sighs. The sound is loud in the quiet room. He rubs his eyes. The mundanity of the task contrasts with the grandeur of the setting. Here, in the heart of the greatest palace on earth, someone still has to count the spoons. We move deeper into the corridors that connect the palace to the Circus Maximus. These are long, sloping ramps. The air here smells of horses and straw, drifting up from the stables below. The circus is empty now, a vast canyon of silence, but the connection is always there. The emperor can walk from his bed to his box without ever stepping onto the street. We pause at a window overlooking the slope. A cat, astray from the city, walks along the top of a wall. It moves with liquid grace, silent and confident. It stops, looks at us with glowing green eyes, and then disappears into the dark. It is the only free creature we have seen tonight. Everyone else, the guards, the slaves, the emperor, is bound by the rigid laws of the palace. The night is deepening. It is the Gallicinium, the time of the cock crow, though no roosters crow here on the hill. It is the deepest part of the night, just before the first hint of dawn. The temperature has dropped to its lowest point. The stones are cold. The dew is heavy. The world is suspended in a state of waiting. We return to the central peristyle garden. The fountain has been turned off to save water pressure for the morning. The basin is a still mirror of black water, reflecting the stars. We sit on a stone bench. The marble sucks the warmth from our legs. It is a grounding sensation. We listen. Far away in the city below, a cartwheel strikes a cobblestone. Clack. A dog barks once, then silence again. The palace feels like a ship drifting on a calm, dark ocean. The massive structures, the tons of brick and marble, are floating in the night. We can feel the fatigue of the building itself. It has stood here for generations, witnessing the same cycle of day and night, power and death, noise and silence. It absorbs it all. The walls are thick with memory. In this quiet hour, the palace seems to be resting, gathering its strength for the performance that will begin again when the sun rises. The oil in the lamps is burning low. The flames are getting smaller, the shadows growing longer and softer. The light is turning from yellow to a deep, dying orange. One by one, the lamps in the distant corridors flicker and go out, their fuel exhausted. The darkness creeps closer, wrapping the colonnades in a protective embrace. We lean back against the cold column. Our eyes are heavy. The rhythm of the palace, the breathing of the emperor, the roar of the furnace, the flow of the water, the scratch of the pen, it all merges into a single, low hum, a lullaby of stone and power. The night is still dark, but the quality of the darkness is changing. We are entering the time the Romans called Antelucem, before the light. It is the coldest hour, the time when the stones of the Palatine seem to contract under the chill of the retreating night. The mist from the Tiber River has crept up the slopes, wrapping the base of the palace in a soft, damp blanket of gray. We find ourselves now at the service gates, located at the bottom of the hill, far below the sleeping quarters of the Caesar. Here, the silence of the night is broken, but gently. This is the only time heavy wagons are permitted within the city limits. We hear them before we see them. The low rumble of wooden wheels on basalt paving stones. Rumble, creak, rumble. The sound is heavy and slow. These are the ox carts, the plaustra, bringing the daily supplies that keep the palace alive. We stand by the archway of the service entrance. A cart pulls up. The oxen are breathing heavily, great plumes of steam erupting from their nostrils into the cold air. Huff, huff. Their hooves clack dully on the stones. The driver does not shout. He clicks his tongue softly. Tsk. Tisk. The cart stops. It is piled high with sacks of grain from the wharves of Ostia. The unloading begins. It is a rhythmic, muscular process. Porters, strong men with calloused hands, step forward. They grasp the sacks. The rough burlap scrapes against their skin. Scrape. They hoist the weight onto their shoulders. Grunt. They walk into the storage tunnels. Their footsteps are heavy, weighted down by the wheat. Thud, thud, thud. There is no conversation. The only communication is a nod, a gesture, a count tally marked on a slate. We follow a sack of grain. It travels down a long, torch-lit corridor, deeper into the substructures. The air here smells of damp earth and dry straw. The sack is deposited in the horia, the granary. It lands on a pile of other sacks with a soft, dusty impact. Whoomp. Dust motes fly up, dancing in the torchlight before settling again. This grain will be bread by noon. Nearby, another cart is unloading olive oil. These are massive terracotta amphorae, sealed with wax and pine resin. They are heavy and fragile. The porters use ropes to lower them from the cart. The ropes strain and creak, creak, creak. They handle the jars with the care of parents holding children. A single slip would mean a spill of valuable oil and a mess that would take hours to clean. The jars are rolled into the cellar. The sound of clay rolling on stone is a hollow, grinding noise. Grind, grind. We leave the storage area and move towards the pistrinum, the imperial bakery. Unlike the rest of the palace, which is asleep, the bakery is waking up. The fires here have been stoked from embers to a roaring blaze. The ovens are massive, domed structures of brick, radiating a fierce heat that combats the morning chill. The air is thick with the smell of yeast, flour, and wood smoke. The millstones are turning, grind, rumble, grind. These are not the small hand mills of the poor. These are large, donkey-driven mills. The donkeys are blindfolded to keep them calm and to prevent them from getting dizzy as they walk in endless circles. Their hooves clip-clop on the stone floor. Clip, clop, clip, clop. The friction of the stone grinding the grain creates a low, vibrating hum that can be felt in the teeth. The bakers, the pistores, are covered in white flour. They look like ghosts in the dim light. They are kneading the dough in great wooden troughs. It is a physical, repetitive action. They push their fists into the dough, fold it over, and push again. Squish, fold, punch. The dough sighs as the air is worked out of it. Puff. It is a living thing, warm and elastic. They shape the loaves, round with segments marked out like a wheel, the panis quadratus. They stamp each loaf with a wooden seal, marking it as imperial property. Thump. Then they use long wooden peels to slide the loaves into the oven. Slide. Shh. The dough hits the hot stone floor of the oven. The smell of baking bread begins to rise, warm and comforting, drifting up the ventilation shafts towards the upper levels. It is the first scent of the new day. We leave the warmth of the bakery and return to the upper corridors. The cleaning crews are starting their work. These are the equerrii and the scapari. They work in the semi-darkness to ensure that when the emperor wakes, the palace is spotless. A slave is washing the mosaic floor of the main hallway. He has a bucket of water and a large sea sponge. He dips the sponge. Splash. He squeezes it out. Squeeze. Trickle. He gets on his hands and knees and begins to scrub. Scrub. Swish. Scrub. The water turns gray with the dust of yesterday. He wipes it up with a dry cloth, leaving the marble tiles glistening and damp. The pattern of the mosaic, black waves on a white background, looks sharper, more defined in the wet stone. Another slave is polishing the bronze statues. He uses a cloth dipped in olive oil and rotten stone, a fine abrasive powder. He rubs the calf of a bronze Mercury. Rub, rub, rub. The metal begins to shine, reflecting the torchlight. He works silently, moving from the foot to the leg to the torso. He is erasing the tarnish of the atmosphere, restoring the golden glow of the god. We move to the lararium, the household shrine. Every Roman home has one, even the palace. It is a small altar in a niche, dedicated to the lares, the guardian spirits of the house. A slave is tending to it. He removes the old offerings, wilted flowers, a dried piece of fruit. He sweeps the small altar clean with a miniature broom. Swish, swish. He places fresh offerings, a few grains of incense on a burning coal. Sizzle. A distinct, spicy smoke rises, curling up the wall. He pours a few drops of wine into a small bowl. Drip, drip. He whispers a prayer, not for himself, but for the safety of the house and its master. It is a private, quiet moment of magic in the pre-dawn gloom. Outside, on the terrace, the sky is beginning to change. It is no longer the deep black of midnight. It is turning a deep, bruise-like purple in the east. The stars are fading, one by one. The constellation of Orion is growing pale, losing its brilliance against the lightening background. The morning star, Venus, hangs bright and solitary above the horizon, a piercing white dot in the purple sky. The birds are waking up. We hear the first tentative chirps from the garden below, a sparrow calling out. Cheep. Then silence, then an answer from another tree. Cheep, cheep. It is not a chorus yet, just the tuning of the instruments. The leaves of the laurel trees rustle in a sudden cold breeze that often comes just before sunrise. Rustle. Shh. We walk towards the barracks of the Praetorian Guard attached to the palace. It is time for the shift change, the Vigilia transition. The night watch is ending. The morning watch is beginning. The movement is more active now than it was at midnight. Men are strapping on their greaves. The sound of leather buckles tightening. Creak. Snap. The lacing of sandals. The checking of weapons. A sword is drawn halfway from its scabbard to check the blade, then slid back in. Shing. Click. The sound is sharp and metallic. The guards form up in the courtyard. They do not march with high steps. They shuffle into formation to keep the noise down. The centurion inspects them. He walks down the line, adjusting a shoulder piece here, straightening a belt there. He speaks in a low, gravelly voice. Ready. Move out. They move towards their posts, replacing the tired men who have stood for hours in the dark. The exchange is silent. A nod, a hand signal. The tired guards return to the barracks, their armor clinking softly with fatigue. Clink, clank, clink. They unbuckle their belts with sighs of relief, the heavy metal dropping onto wooden benches. Thud. We drift back into the private quarters. The Hippocaust fires have been stoked up again to combat the morning chill. We can feel the floor getting warmer through our sandals. The palace is a machine that is revving up its engine. In the atrium, the water clock, the clepsydra, marks the passage of time. It is a vessel that drips water into a lower container at a constant rate. A float in the lower container rises, pointing to the hour on a scale. We watch the water drip, 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 drip. It is a slow, relentless countdown to the sunrise. The float rises imperceptibly. Time is fluid here, literally. We enter the tablinum, the study. It is empty, but prepared. A slave has laid out the wax tablets and fresh scrolls for the day's work. The inkwell has been filled. The reed pens have been sharpened and laid in a neat row. Click, click. The chair is pushed in at the perfect angle. The room is in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the actor to step onto the stage. The smell of the palace at this hour is complex. It is a mixture of the fading night, damp earth, cold stone, and the arriving day, baking bread, wood smoke, fresh water, and the faint metallic tang of the morning mist. It is a clean smell, expectant and fresh. We return to the window facing east. The purple in the sky has lightened to a deep blue, and at the very edge of the horizon, a line of pale saffron yellow is appearing. The silhouette of the Alban Hills is becoming distinct, a jagged black line against the brightening sky. The city below is still mostly dark, but we can see the smoke beginning to rise from thousands of cooking fires, gray columns ascending to join the mist. A rooster crows in the distance, down in the Forum Boreum. Crow. It is faint, carried on the wind. Then another, closer. The city is tossing in its sleep, beginning to wake. But up here on the hill, there is still a bubble of quiet. We watch the dew on the balcony railing. It has formed heavy, perfect droplets. As the light increases, the droplets become clear, like glass beads. One becomes too heavy and slides down the marble, leaving a wet trail. Slide. Plop. The servants are now moving with more urgency. We see a line of slaves carrying fresh towels towards the baths. They move quickly, their tunics fluttering. Flap, flap. They are barefoot, their feet making soft slapping sounds on the stone. Slap, slap, slap. They are the blood cells of the palace, circulating the oxygen of service before the body wakes up. In the kitchen, the Archimagirus, the head chef, has arrived. He is inspecting the supplies that came in on the carts. He pokes a sack of flour. He smells a fish. He is grumpy in the morning. He barks a short, quiet order to a subordinate. The subordinate runs off. The kitchen is shifting from the slow rhythm of the bakers to the frantic rhythm of the day's meals. Chopping begins. Chop, chop, chop. Rhythmic, fast, precise. Back in the Imperial bedroom, the light is just beginning to bleed through the heavy curtains. It is not enough to wake the sleeper, but enough to change the atmosphere of the room. The alabaster lamp is still burning, but its light now looks yellow and sickly compared to the gray dawn filtering in. The cubicularius at the door stands up, stretches silently, and smooths his tunic. He takes a sip of water from a flask. He wets his fingers and smooths his hair. He is ready. The palace is poised on the edge of the day. The transition is almost complete. The hidden work of the night is done. The stage is set. The bread is baking. The floors are wet and clean. The guards are fresh. The scrolls are ready. The empire is waiting for the sun. We stand in the center of the great peristyle, listening to the fountain which has just been turned back on. The pressure builds. Gurgle. Sputter. Whoosh. The water shoots up, catches the gray light, and falls back into the basin. Splash. The sound is crisp and loud in the morning air. It is the signal that the day has officially begun. We watch the ripples spread out in the basin, bouncing off the sides, intersecting, creating a complex pattern of interference. The water is cold and clear. We dip a hand in. It is freezing. The shock of the cold is grounding. This is the reality of the morning. We look up at the columns of the colonnade. They are no longer shadows. They are solid stone, yellow Numidian marble, pink Aswan granite. The colors are muted in the low light, but they are there. The dream world of the night has solidified back into the stone world of the empire. The sun has now fully breached the horizon. It is no longer a suggestion of light, but a physical force striking the eastern face of the Palatine. The rays hit the gilded roof tiles of the Temple of Apollo, sending a blinding reflection across the valley, a signal fire that the day has truly begun. Inside the palace, the gray light of dawn gives way to the warm, revealing illumination of the morning. We move now to the Gynecium, the women's quarters. If the emperor's mourning is a ritual of state, the empress's mourning is a ritual of construction. We enter the private chambers, passing through a heavy curtain of embroidered silk. The air here is distinct, warmer, heavier, and layered with the complex scents of the toilette. It smells of iris root, marjoram, and the fatty organic scent of lanolin. The empress, or perhaps a high-ranking Augusta, is seated in a high-backed chair made of wicker, which creaks softly as she shifts her weight. Creak, snap. Before her is a table laden with the tools of beauty. It looks less like a vanity and more like a laboratory. There are dozens of small pots, jars, and glass vials. Picksides, made of boxwood, alabaster jars from Egypt, and tiny silver spoons. Surrounding her is a small army of specialized slaves. These are the ornatresses, the hairdressers and adorners. They move with a terrifying precision. There is no room for error here. The room is silent, save for the sounds of their work. First, the face. A slave girl mixes a white powder in a small stone dish. This is cerusa, white lead. She adds a drop of water and mixes it with her finger. Swirl, swirl. The paste is thick and creamy. She applies it to the mistress's face with a soft sponge. The motion is rhythmic and gentle. Pat, pat, pat. The skin is coated, turning a pale, statue-like white. It is a mask of perfection, hiding the human skin beneath. Next, the cheeks. Another pot is opened. This one contains red ochre or perhaps the lees of wine. A small brush is used to apply a circle of color to the cheekbones. Brush, brush. It is blended carefully, fading into the white. The effect is a stylized flush of health. The eyes are next. This requires the steadiest hand. A slave holds a small stick of charcoal or soot mixed with oil. She leans in close. The mistress stares straight ahead, unblinking. The slave traces the line of the eyelid. Scritch. Slide. It is a dark, heavy line. Then the eyebrows. They are darkened and extended, almost meeting in the middle, a sign of beauty and intelligence. The concentration in the room is palpable. A breath held, a line drawn, a breath released. But the true labor is the hair. The Roman aristocratic hairstyle is an architectural marvel, a tower of curls and braids that defies gravity. The head, ornatrix, stands behind the chair. She holds a comb made of bone, its teeth fine and sharp. She detangles the long hair. Scrape, pull, scrape. The sound of the comb through the hair is dry and static-charged. On a nearby brazier, a small fire is burning. Resting in the coals is the calamistrum, the curling iron. It is a hollow metal tube. A slave pulls it from the fire. It glows dull red. She holds it near her cheek to test the heat. It is hot, but not burning. She wraps a lock of hair around the metal. Sizzle. A faint sound of steam escaping from the hair, accompanied by the smell of hot metal and singed protein. She holds it for a count of 10. 1, 2, 3. She slides the iron out. A perfect, tight cylinder of hair remains. This is repeated dozens of times. Wrap, sizzle, hold, release. The head becomes a mass of tight curls. But they will not stay in place on their own. The ornatrix takes a needle and thread. Yes, the hairstyle is sewn together. She stitches the curls to each other and to the backing of the hair. Poke, pull, loop. The thread is invisible, hidden within the mass of hair. It is a tedious, intricate process, like embroidery, but on a living canvas. Once the structure is secure, the diadem is placed. A band of gold set with pearls and emeralds. It settles onto the brow with a soft clink. The pearls are warm against the skin. Mirrors are brought forward, polished discs of silver and bronze held by servants. The mistress turns her head slowly. Left, right. The reflection in the metal is slightly distorted, a golden, hazy image of power. While the hair is being finished, the dressing begins. The clothes are brought out from the cedar chests where they are stored to keep away moths. The smell of cedar is sharp and resinous when the lid is lifted. Creak, whoosh. First, the tunica intima, the under tunic of soft linen, then the stola, the long dress of the matron. It is made of silk, imported from the mysterious lands of the Ceres, China, at immense cost. The fabric makes a distinctive sound. It whispers. Swish, rustle, swish. It flows like colored water, perhaps a shade of teal or sea green today. It is pinned at the shoulders with gold fibulae, brooches shaped like bees. Click, snap. Finally, the palla, the rectangular cloak, is draped over the head and shoulders. It is heavy, grounding the floaty silk of the dress. The mistress stands. She is now an icon. The human woman has been encased in layers of lead, wool, gold, and silk. She moves slowly, the weight of her appearance dictating her pace. We leave the scented, intense atmosphere of the gynaeceum and step back into the wider corridors of the palace. The palace is fully awake now. The administrative heart of the empire is beginning to beat. We walk towards the offices of the Imperial Secretariat, the Skrinia. This is a different world from the quiet luxury of the private quarters. This is a factory of paper and ink. The rooms are lined with shelves, stacked high with scroll cases. The air smells of dust, wax, and vinegar. The ab epistulis, the secretary in charge of correspondence, is already at his desk. He is a freedman, a man of immense intelligence and power, though he wears a simple tunic. He is dictating to a room full of scribes. The scribes sit on benches, their heads bent over papyrus scrolls. The sound in this room is a continuous, scratching hum. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. It sounds like 1,000 insects eating dry leaves. They are writing in shorthand, notae tironianae, a system of symbols that allows them to keep up with the speed of speech. To the proconsul of Asia, the secretary says, scritch, scratch. Regarding the tax dispute in Ephesus, scritch, scratch. The emperor decrees. A slave enters carrying a bundle of reeds from Egypt. He drops them on a table. Clatter. He begins to cut them into new pens using a small, sharp knife. Slice, whittle, slice. The shavings of the reed curl onto the floor. In the corner, the AB Rationibus, the accountant, is working with an abacus. It is a bronze plate with grooves and small stone counters. He slides the counters back and forth. Click, 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 click. He is calculating the grain dole for the coming month. The numbers are vast. The fate of thousands of people depends on the position of these little stones. He mutters to himself, 10,000 modi, 20,000. Click, slide. We watch a messenger, a tabularius, preparing to leave. He is being given a leather pouch containing official dispatches. The pouch is sealed. A lump of red beeswax is melted over a candle flame. Drip, drip. The wax falls onto the leather knot. The imperial signet ring is pressed into the hot wax. Squish. The seal hardens instantly. The messenger bows, takes the pouch, and turns to leave. We hear his running footsteps fading down the corridor. Pat, 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 pat. He will run to the post station, change horses, and ride north, carrying the emperor's voice to the frontier. We drift out of the offices and onto the balcony that overlooks the Forum Romanum. The city below is now in full swing. The roar of Rome has returned. It rises up the hill like a physical wave, a mixture of shouting, hammering, barking, and the rumble of wheels. But up here, behind the marble balustrades, the noise is distant, a background texture to the serenity of the palace. We see the triclinium being cleaned from last night's dinner. The slaves are sweeping the floor with palm frond brooms. Swish, swish. The windows are being opened to air out the smell of stale wine and food. A bird flies in through the open window, circles the high ceiling once, and flies out again. We walk to the private garden again. The sun is now high enough to warm the stone benches. A gardener is watering the medicinal herbs, mint, sage, fennel. The water from his can hits the dry earth. Patter, patter. The smell of wet soil and spicy herbs rises up. He pinches off a dead leaf from a sage plant. Snap. He crumbles it in his fingers and drops it. In the colonnade, a philosopher is waiting. He has been summoned to converse with the emperor later in the day. He paces back and forth. His sandals slap the stone. Slap, slap, turn, slap, slap, turn. He is rehearsing his arguments in his head. He stops, looks at a statue of a satyr, mutters a phrase in Greek, and resumes his pacing. He is nervous. The palace makes everyone nervous, even the wise. We hear a strange sound coming from a side room. It is a rhythmic rattling. Ch-ch-ch. Rattle. We peek inside. It is the imperial dice players. Gambling is a favorite pastime of the court. Even at this hour, a game is in progress. The dice are made of bone or ivory. They are thrown into a fritillus, a small tower that prevents cheating. They rattle down the steps of the tower and land on the table. Rattle, clatter. Venus throw, someone whispers. Money changes hands. Coins slide across the table. Ching, slide. We move on, deeper into the complex, towards the library of the Domus Tiberiana. This is an older part of the palace. The corridors here are narrower, the ceilings lower. The air is cooler, smelling of old stone and damp. We pass a room where the imperial tasters are working. The praegustator sits at a table. A servant brings him a sample of every dish that will be served at the midday meal. A spoonful of porridge, a sip of wine, a piece of melon. He eats, he waits. Chew, swallow, wait. He looks at the hourglass. If he does not die or fall ill, the food is safe for the emperor. It is a job of high risk and high boredom. He takes a sip of water to cleanse his palate. Gulp. He marks a slate with a piece of chalk. Scritch. Safe. We continue to the library. It is quiet, as all libraries are. But there is a slave here, repairing a scroll. The papyrus has torn. He is using a glue made from flour and water. He applies a thin layer with a brush. Brush. He presses a fresh strip of papyrus over the tear. Press. Smooth. He places a heavy lead weight on top of it to hold it flat while it dries. Thump. The patience required is infinite. He does not look up as we pass. Outside the library, on a sun-drenched terrace, a group of pages, young boys from noble families, are practicing their rhetoric. They are the future senators of Rome. They stand in a circle, taking turns speaking. "Citizens of Rome!" one boy shouts, his voice cracking slightly. The tutor corrects his posture. "Chin up, Lucius. Project from the diaphragm." The boy tries again. "Citizens of Rome!" It is a rehearsal for a life of public performance. The wind carries their young voices away over the edge of the hill, dispersing their words into the vast air above the city. The morning is advancing. The shadows are shortening. The heat is beginning to build again, promising another scorching Roman day. The palace has fully shed the skin of the night. It is now a functioning machine of state, a home, a fortress, and a stage. Every gear is turning. Every actor is in place. We stop by a fountain in the shape of a river god. The water flows from his overturned jar. It splashes into a pool filled with fish, carp, fat and lazy, swimming slowly in the green water. Splash. Plop. A slave throws a handful of breadcrumbs into the water. The water boils for a second as the fish surface to eat. Snap, splash, gulp. Then they descend again, leaving widening rings on the surface. We sit on the edge of the fountain. The stone is warm. The sound of the water is constant, a white noise that masks the whispers of the courtiers passing by. We are in the eye of the storm, the center of the world. And yet, it is just a place of stone and water, sunlight and shadow, repeating the same day over and over again. The sun has now reached its zenith, claiming the sky completely. It hangs directly over the Palatine Hill, a blinding white disk that erases shadows and flattens the world below. The coolness of the morning is a distant memory, replaced by the formidable weight of the Roman summer heat. The stones of the palace, which were cold to the touch only hours ago, are now radiating warmth, breathing the sun's energy back into the air. We move towards the outer terraces, where the heat is most intense. Here, we witness a feat of daily engineering designed to combat the sun, the deployment of the Valeria. These are massive awnings of canvas, dyed in stripes of red and yellow, rigged on ropes and pulleys between the columns. A team of sailors, recruited from the Imperial fleet at Misenum, specifically for this task, stands ready. They understand ropes and wind in a way the palace slaves do not. The gubernator, the pilot of this land ship, gives a signal. A whistle blows, sharp and cutting. Tweet. The men heave on the thick hemp ropes. The sound is a symphony of tension. The ropes tighten, groaning against the wooden blocks. Creak, groan, creak. The heavy canvas begins to unfurl, sliding along the guide wires. It snaps and flutters as it catches the breeze. Flap, snap, whoosh. Slowly, inexorably, the sky is covered. The blinding white light is filtered through the colored fabric, turning the terrace into a cool, amber-hued tunnel. The temperature drops instantly in the shade. The sailors tie off the ropes around bronze cleats with practiced, rapid knots. Loop, pull, tight. The awnings ripple gently overhead, a man-made sky protecting the divine ruler from the solar god. Under this new shade, we walk towards a very specific, quiet corner of the palace complex, the workshop of the Gemmerie, the Imperial gem cutters. This is a world of microscopic focus. The workshop is small, well lit by northern light which does not glare. The air here smells of diamond dust, oil, and wet stone. The master cutter is hunched over a workbench. He is working on a piece of sardonyx, carving a cameo. He uses a bow drill. The bow is made of flexible wood. The string is gut. He moves the bow back and forth. Zzz, zzz, zzz. The drill bit, tipped with diamond dust and oil, spins rapidly. It bites into the stone. It is a sound like a large insect buzzing. He does not look up. His eyes are fixed on a space no larger than a fingernail. He is carving the profile of the emperor. He pauses to wipe the stone with a small sponge. Swipe. He checks his progress. He applies more oil. Dab. He resumes drilling. Zzzt, zzzt. The patience required here is measured in years, not hours. A single slip of the hand would destroy a month's work. Around him, apprentices are polishing finished stones. They rub the gems against leather strips coated in pumice powder. Rub, rub, rub. The rhythm is hypnotic, a soft friction that slowly turns rough rock into a gleaming jewel. We leave the intense focus of the gem cutters and drift towards the valetudinarium, the imperial infirmary. Even god-emperors get sick, and the palace has a fully staffed medical wing. The air here is pungent, thick with the smell of drying herbs, vinegar, and burnt wool. The archiatros, the chief physician, is preparing a poultice. He stands at a marble table covered in dried plants. He selects a handful of dried poppy heads. He drops them into a bronze mortar. He takes the heavy pestle. Crunch. The dry pods break. He begins to grind. Grind, grind, grind. The sound is gritty and coarse. The powder becomes fine. He adds honey, thick and golden, pouring it slowly from a jar. Drip, drip, drip. He mixes it into a paste. Squish, stir. In the next room, a surgical assistant is cleaning instruments. He lays out bronze scalpels, probes, and bone saws on a clean linen cloth. He wipes each one with vinegar to purify it. Wipe, clink, wipe, clink. The metal is bright and terrifyingly sharp. He arranges them by size, an arsenal of healing that looks suspiciously like an arsenal of war. There are no patients right now, only the waiting, the preparation, and the heavy, medicinal silence. We move back to the public sphere, to the basilica, the great hall where the emperor hears legal cases. The morning session is ending. The final petitioner is speaking. The hall is vast, and his voice echoes, bouncing off the colored marble walls. Justice, justice, justice. The echo repeats, fading into the ceiling. The emperor sits on the tribunal, a raised platform. He looks tired. He shifts in his curl chair. The wood creates a sharp sound in the quiet hall. Crack. He raises a hand. The petitioner stops mid-sentence. The silence that follows is heavy with authority. The emperor speaks a single sentence, his verdict. It is low, but it carries. The scribe at the foot of the dais dips his pen and records it. Scritch, scratch. The judgment is now law. The session is closed. Dimitite, the herald calls out. Dismissed. The doors are opened and the crowd shuffles out, a sea of murmuring togas and scuffing sandals. Shuffle, shuffle, murmur. Now comes the prandium, the midday meal. Unlike the dinner we witnessed last night, this is a casual, quick affair. It is eaten in a smaller garden room, open to the breeze but shaded by the valerium. There is no music, no performance, just food. Servants bring in the trays. The food is simple, cold, and refreshing. There is moritum, a spread made of garlic, cheese, and herbs pounded together in a mortar. There are cold cuts of pork, leftovers from the previous night's roast. There are hard-boiled eggs. There are bowls of figs and grapes covered with wet cloths to keep them cool. The emperor eats while reading a dispatch. He tears a piece of bread. Rip. He dips it into olive oil. Dip. He chews slowly. The silence of the meal is broken only by the sound of a fountain nearby and the distant rhythmic buzzing of cicadas. Ray, ray, ray. The cicadas are the soundtrack of the Roman noon. Their song is a sonic wall of heat, rising and falling in intensity, vibrating through the air. A servant pours wine, but it is watered down heavily, almost to the point of being colored water. It is a thirst quencher, not an intoxicant. The liquid splashes into the glass cup. Glug, glug. The glass is Roman glass, slightly green and bubbly, cool to the touch. As the meal ends, the palace begins to shut down. We are approaching the meridiatio, the sacred midday rest. In the Mediterranean climate, the 6th and 7th hours are too hot for work. The city stops. The shops close. The palace turns inward. We watch the slaves closing the shutters on the western side of the palace to block the afternoon sun. These are heavy wooden shutters, hinged with bronze. Creak. Bang, creak, bang. Room by room, the light is shut out. The palace is transforming into a cave. The bright, harsh light of noon is replaced by deep, cool shadows. In the corridors, the equerri are sprinkling water on the mosaic floors. They use their hands to flick water from buckets. Splash, splash. The water hits the warm stones and evaporates, cooling the air through convection. The smell of wet stone returns, a refreshing, earthy scent that combats the dry heat. The courtiers have retreated to their guest wings. The soldiers in the guard rooms have taken off their helmets. They sit on benches, leaning their heads back against the wall, eyes closed. The dice games have stopped. It is too hot even to gamble. We wander into the peristyle of the Domus Flavia. It is deserted. The heat produces a shimmering effect above the marble pavement, making the columns look like they are wavering in water. A lizard, a small green wall lizard, scuttles across the floor. Skitter, skitter. It stops in a patch of sunlight, pumps its body up and down once, and freezes. It is the only thing moving. We find a quiet alcove near the library. There is a daybed here, a lectus, upholstered in cool linen. We sit. The silence is different from the silence of the night. The night silence was empty and cold. This silence is heavy, thick, and warm. It presses down on you. It is a drowsy silence, induced by the heat and the fullness of the stomach. We can hear the wind chimes, the tintinnabulum, hanging in the portico. They are made of bronze, shaped like bells and phalluses, a good luck charm. A hot breeze stirs them. Tink, tonk, tink. The sound is lazy and irregular. It does not wake the mind, it lulls it. In the distance, a dog barks, but lazily, without conviction. Woof. Then silence. The birds have stopped singing. They are hiding in the thick foliage of the ilex trees. The only sound is the cicadas, that endless drilling drone. Ree, ree, ree. It becomes white noise, a backdrop that blurs the edges of consciousness. The emperor has retired to his summer sleeping quarters, a room built partially underground to stay cool. We imagine him there. The room is dark. A slave stands in the corner with a large fan made of peacock feathers. He waves it slowly, rhythmically. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The air moves across the sleeper's face. The motion is steady, a pendulum marking the time of rest. We walk slowly through the empty hallways. Our own footsteps seem too loud. Tap, tap. We stop walking to let the silence return. We look at the dust motes floating in a single beam of light that has escaped through a crack in the shutters. They move slowly, suspended in the thick, warm air. Float, drift. We pass the room of the clocks. The water clock is still dripping, indifferent to the heat. Drip, drip. But the sundial in the courtyard is useless now, as the shadows are swallowed by the glare. Time has become sticky and slow. This is the hour of the ghosts of noon. The Romans believed that at midday, the veil between the worlds was thin. The gods were resting, and one should not disturb them. Pan, the god of the wild, was said to sleep at this hour, and to wake him was to invite panic. So the palace holds its breath. It respects the slumber of the gods and the men who think they are gods. We lean against a cool porphyry column. The stone sucks the heat from our backs. We close our eyes for a moment, listening to the nothingness. The roar of the empire has been muted. There is only the heat, the stone, and the slow, rhythmic beating of the fan in the dark room nearby. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The heavy, suffocating blanket of the midday heat begins to lift, not because the temperature drops significantly, but because the air begins to move again. The meridiaccio is over. The palace is waking up for the second time today. It is a slower, groggier awakening than the crisp alertness of the morning. This is the transition into the long, golden afternoon of the Mediterranean. We hear the sound of the heavy wooden shutters being pushed open again. Creak. Bang. The sound echoes down the long corridor of the Domus Augustana. Shafts of light, no longer vertical and blinding but slanted and rich with amber hues, pierce the gloom of the interior. The dust motes, which had settled during the quiet hours, are kicked up again, swirling in the new currents of air. We walk towards the stadium of the palace. This is not a public arena, but a private sunken garden shaped like a racetrack, enclosed by high walls. It is a place for strolling and gentle exercise. The shadows here are already long, stretching halfway across the grass. At one end of the stadium, a small detachment of the Praetorian Guard is drilling. They are not shouting. This is a maintenance drill, a ritual of muscle memory. They are practicing with the rudis, the heavy wooden training sword, against a wooden post, the palos. We watch the rhythm of the strike. The soldier steps forward with his left foot. He thrusts the wooden sword. Thud. It hits the post with a dull, heavy sound. He recovers. He steps back. He raises his shield. He steps forward. Thud. It is a metronomic beat. Step, thrust, thud, recover. Step, thrust, thud. There is no anger in it, only geometry and physics. The wood of the sword is scarred and dented from thousands of impacts. The post is whittled away at the center. The soldier's face is a mask of concentration. Sweat runs down his temple, catching the afternoon light before dropping onto the dry dust of the arena floor. Drip. Further down the stadium, a group of slaves is raking the sand of the running track. They move in a line, pulling heavy wooden rakes behind them. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. They are erasing the footprints of the morning, smoothing the surface into a perfect, untouched ribbon of tan-colored earth. The sound is soothing, like the sound of waves on a gravel beach, continuous and abrasive. We leave the rhythmic thudding of the soldiers and move towards the Imperial stables, located near the connection to the Circus Maximus. This is a cathedral of horses. The ceiling is vaulted, the columns are marble, and the stalls are made of polished oak. The smell here is earthy and rich, sweet hay, oiled leather, and the warm, musky scent of high-bred animals. These are not ordinary horses. These are the stars of the greens and the blues, the chariot factions. Some are famous enough to have their names graffitied on walls in Pompeii and London. Currently, they are being groomed. A stable hand is brushing a glossy black stallion. He uses a stiff bristled brush. Swish, swish, swish. He moves with long, firm strokes along the flank of the animal. The horse stands still, enjoying the friction, occasionally stamping a hoof on the straw-covered floor. Thump. The dust from the coat rises in small puffs, visible in the shafts of sunlight coming through the high windows. Another groom is cleaning hooves. He lifts the heavy leg of the horse, resting it on his knee. He uses a metal pick to clean out the stones and dirt. Pick, scrape, tap. The sound is sharp and metallic. He checks the iron shoe, tapping it with a small hammer to ensure the nails are tight. Ting, ting. The horse blows air through its nose, a soft, vibrating flutter. Purrt. In the corner, the tack is being prepared for an evening exercise. The leather harnesses are being oiled. A man sits on a stool, rubbing a mixture of tallow and beeswax into the reins. Rub, squeeze, rub. The leather creaks softly as he works it, becoming supple and dark. The smell of the wax is honey-like, mixing with the sharper scent of the ammonia from the stalls. It is a masculine, functional space, quiet and serious. We leave the stables and ascend a staircase back to the main level. We find ourselves near the Odeum, a small, semicircular theater built within the palace complex. It is empty of an audience, but not silent. A rehearsal is taking place for the evening's entertainment. A poet is standing center stage. He is reciting an ode to the harvest. His voice is projected, bouncing off the curved acoustic wall behind him. Ceres, golden mother of the grain. He pauses. The Chilurch, the master of ceremonies, interrupts him. Too fast, slower, give the words weight. The poet nods. He clears his throat. Ahem. He begins again, slower. Ceres, golden mother of the grain. In the orchestra pit, a musician is tuning a kithara, a large concert lyre. He tightens a peg. Creak. He plucks the string. Pling. It is flat. He tightens it further. Creak. He plucks again. Plong. Better. He runs his fingers over all the strings, a cascading scale that ripples through the empty theater. Strum. The notes hang in the air, fading slowly into the stone tiers of seats. We sit in the back row for a moment. The stone seat is still warm from the day's heat. We watch the dust dancing in the spotlight of the sun. The scene is one of preparation, of perfectionism. The rehearsal is repetitive. They do the same line over and over again. Repeat, stop, correct, repeat. It is the grinding work of art performed in the quiet afternoon. We drift away, drawn by the increasing activity in the corridors. The balcony, the baths, are now the center of social gravity. While the emperor bathed earlier, the court is bathing now. We pass the entrance to the main bath complex. The noise is a muffled roar of water and voices. We do not go in, but we listen from the outside. We hear the echo of laughter hitting the vaulted ceilings, the splash of bodies hitting the water, ka-splash, the slapping of massage, the clinking of oil flasks. It is the sound of the Roman social machine at work. Deals are being made in the steam. Marriages are being arranged in the tepidarium. Enemies are being assessed in the changing room. We move instead to the kulina, the great kitchens. If they were busy this morning, they are a frantic hive now. The evening meal, the cena, is approaching. The heat in the kitchen is intense. The great ovens are at full power. We see a line of slaves plucking pheasants. Rip, tear, rip. Feathers float in the air, sticking to the sweaty skin of the workers. The sound is a soft, tearing noise. Another group is chopping vegetables. A dozen knives hitting a dozen wooden boards in a chaotic rhythm. Chop, 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 chop. It sounds like heavy rain on a roof. A sauce is boiling in a massive copper cauldron. It is bubbling thickly. Bloop, bloop, hiss. A cook stirs it with a ladle as big as an oar. The smell is overpowering. Garlic, fish sauce, vinegar, and honey all boiling together into a thick, pungent glaze. We watch the pastry chefs. They are constructing a centerpiece. It is a statue of edible dough, shaped like the Colossus of Rhodes. They are gluing the parts together with honey. They work with delicate tools, sculpting the face of the dough giant. One chef uses a small brush to paint the dough with egg yolk so it will shine when baked. Brush, brush. The level of detail is absurd, considering it will be eaten and destroyed in a few hours. We step out of the stifling heat of the kitchen into the cryptoporticus again, seeking the cool underground air. We follow a different branch this time, one that leads to the Imperial Winery. This is a cellar deep in the hill, where the temperature never changes. It is dark here, lit only by a few flickering lamps. The air smells of old wood and vinegar. Rows of wooden barrels, imported from Gaul, a new technology replacing the clay amphorae for bulk storage, line the walls. We tap a barrel with our knuckle. Thump, thump. It sounds solid, full of liquid. A sommelier, the hoster, is testing a vintage. He uses a long glass pipette, a teak, to draw wine from a bunghole. He lowers the tube. Slurp. He puts his thumb over the top. He lifts it out, holding a column of ruby liquid. He releases it into a silver tasting cup. Splash. He swirls it. Swish. Swish. He smells it, inhaling deeply. He takes a sip. Slurp. He holds it in his mouth, then spits it into a bucket. Spit. He nods in the dark. It is ready. We ascend back to the surface. The light has changed again. We are entering the golden hour proper. The sun is low in the west, hanging over the Vatican Hill. The light is thick, syrupy, and intensely gold. It turns the white marble of the palace into a glowing honey color. The red brickwork burns with a fiery intensity. We walk out onto the Belvedere, the viewing platform that overlooks the Forum Romanum. The scene below is breathtaking. The shadows of the temples are stretching across the paving stones, long and dramatic. The Forum is crowded. we can see the tiny figures of people moving like ants. But up here, the air is still. We lean on the railing. A hawk glides past, eye level with us, riding the thermals rising from the heated stones of the city. We hear the wind rushing over its wings. Whoosh! It banks and dives, disappearing towards the Senate House. The changing of the light brings a change in the soundscape. The cicadas are quieting down, their day shift ending. In their place, the crickets are beginning to tune up. Chirp, chirp. The doves in the roof tiles are cooing, a soft, bubbling sound. Cuckoo. We watch the vigils, the city watch, lighting the first street torches down in the valley. Tiny sparks of light appear in the blue shadows of the streets below. One, then another, then another. It is a slow constellation forming on the earth. Back in the palace, the lamps are being prepared again for the night. But we are in the transition zone. The natural light is fighting its last battle with the artificial light. We walk through a gallery of busts. The golden light hits the marble faces sideways, exaggerating their features. The wrinkles on Vespasian's brow look deeper. The curl of Nero's lip looks more petulant. The stone seems to age as the sun sets. We enter the triclinium again. It is fully set now. The silver we saw earlier is gleaming. The flowers, roses and violets, have been scattered on the floor. The scent is heady and sweet, mixing with the smell of the beeswax used to polish the tables. A slave is lighting the incense burners in the corners. He sprinkles grains of frankincense onto the hot coals. Sizzle. A thin ribbon of white smoke rises, perfectly straight in the still air, until it hits the ceiling and spreads out like a canopy. The smell is sharp, resinous, and holy. It marks the space as sacred, ready for the ritual of the meal. We stand by the great doors of the dining hall, looking out into the courtyard. The sky is turning from gold to a deep, bruising purple. The first star, Vesper, appears. The day is dying. The frantic energy of the afternoon is settling into the anticipation of the evening. We hear the distant sound of a trumpet, a cornu, blowing from the Praetorian camp. Brahm. It is the signal for the changing of the watch, marking the end of the working day. The sound is mournful and brassy, echoing off the hills of Rome. The palace takes a deep breath. The heat is radiating out of the walls, creating a warm, enveloping aura. We are suspended between the work of the day and the pleasure of the night. It is a moment of perfect, golden equilibrium. The purple hue of twilight has deepened into the true indigo of night. The transition is complete. The sun has been gone for an hour, and the stars have reclaimed their dominance over the Palatine. We are standing in the shadows of the Domus Flavia, watching the final act of the day play out. The great dinner, the cena, is concluding. From behind the closed doors of the dining hall, the sounds have changed. The polite murmurs of the early evening have grown softer, more sporadic. The wine has done its work, heavying the eyelids and slowing the tongues. We hear the scraping of chair legs, or rather, the shifting of the heavy dining couches. Scrape, thud. The guests are beginning to rise. The doors swing open. A wedge of yellow lamplight cuts across the dark courtyard, illuminating the mist that has begun to form again. The guests emerge. They move slowly, supported by their slaves. Their steps are unhurried, weighted by the richness of the food and the lateness of the hour. They wrap their togas and cloaks tight against the night air, which has turned surprisingly crisp. The courtyard is filled with the low murmur of departure. Veil, they whisper. Veil. Farewell. It is a soft, rolling sound, like the retreating tide. The torches of their attendants are lit. Whoosh. The flames dance in the darkness, casting long, erratic shadows that leap up the walls of the palace. We watch the procession of lights move away, winding down the ramps towards the forum, a river of fireflies dispersing into the city. Inside the dining hall, the aftermath is quiet. The entertainment has ceased. The lyre player is packing his instrument into a leather case. Click. Snap. The flute player is dismantling his pipes, wiping them clean with a cloth. The air in the room is thick, a physical layer of scent, spilled wine, extinguished beeswax, wilting roses, and the lingering, heavy aroma of roasted meats. The slaves move like shadows. They are not rushing now. They are moving with the efficient lethargy of the end of a shift. They blow out the candles on the tables. Puff. A thin line of gray smoke rises from each wick, adding a final, acrid note to the air. The room darkens, section by section. The vibrant frescoes on the walls, the gardens, the gods, the feasts, fade into the gloom. They will wait in the dark until tomorrow. We leave the fading warmth of the public halls and retreat once more to the private wing. The corridors are silent. The only sound is the settling of the building itself, the cooling stone contracts. Crack. A sharp sound from a timber beam. Creak. It is the palace stretching its bones, adjusting to the temperature drop. We reach the cubiculum. The emperor has returned. The undressing ritual is the reverse of the morning, but faster, quieter. The heavy jewelry is removed. The ring is placed on the table. Clink. The toga is unpinned and slides to the floor with a soft whoosh of heavy wool. The sandals are unlaced. The emperor washes his face in a basin of tepid water. Splash. Drip. He lies down. The lamps are extinguished, save for the single alabaster nightlight we saw before. The room shrinks down to this small circle of weak light. The heavy curtains are drawn. The world is shut out. The breathing becomes regular. Inhale. Exhale. The ruler of the Mediterranean, the commander of legions, drifts away into the private, ungovernable world of sleep. Outside the door, the guard takes up his post. He leans on his spear. He stares down the long, empty corridor. He is the anchor in the stream of time, fixed and immovable. He blinks slowly. Blink. He shifts his weight. The leather of his armor sighs. We wander further, to the very edge of the hill, to a terrace overlooking the Circus Maximus. The great racetrack is a black void below us. It is completely silent. No chariots, no cheering crowds, just a vast empty loop of sand. The moonlight catches the spina, the central barrier, turning the obelisks and statues into pale, ghostly silhouettes. We look out over the city of Rome. It is a sprawling ocean of rooftops, dark and uneven. Here and there, a watchfire burns. We can hear the faint, very distant sound of a dog barking in the Trastevere district. Woof, woof. And the sound of the Tiber River, swollen with mountain runoff, rushing under the bridges. Rush. It is a low, constant background static, the white noise of history. The wind picks up slightly, rustling the pines in the Imperial Gardens behind us. Shh. Swish. The scent of pine resin and damp earth is strong. It is a clean, cold smell. The heat of the day has been completely erased. We walk back towards the center of the complex, passing the fountains. They have been turned off for the night to let the water pressure build up in the cisterns. The basins are still pools of black glass. We look into one. We see the reflection of the moon, a perfect, wavering white disk. We drop a small pebble into the water. Plop. The ripples spread out, distorting the moon, breaking it into shards of light, before slowly calming down again to a mirror finish. We enter the library one last time. It is pitch black. We can smell the books, the dry papyrus, the leather cases, the cedar wood shelves. It is the smell of knowledge sleeping. The words are there, rolled up, waiting for the light to return. But for now, they are silent. We descend into the cryptoporticus, the underground tunnel. It is cool and damp. Our footsteps echo. Step, echo, step. We are walking through the foundations of the empire. These bricks, these arches, they hold it all up. In the dark, they feel massive, eternal. We run a hand along the wall. The plaster is cold and smooth. We find a small service door and step out into a minor courtyard. A cat is sleeping on a bench, curled into a tight ball. It does not move as we pass. It is completely at peace. The palace belongs to the cats at night. We look up at the sheer walls of the palace rising above us. In the moonlight, they look like a cliff face, a man-made mountain. The windows are dark eyes, closed against the night. The entire structure feels heavy, grounded, sinking into the earth with its own weight. The cycle is complete. We have seen the dawn, the bustle of the morning, the heat of the noon, the golden afternoon, and the return of the night. The machine has run its course. It has processed the petitions, eaten the food, fought the gravity, and burned the oil. Now it rests. The silence is now absolute. The distant city noise has faded. The wind has died down. There is only the stillness. It is a heavy, blanket-like stillness that covers everything. We find a quiet corner, a stone bench under an archway. We sit. We lean back against the wall. The stone is solid. We close our eyes. The afterimage of the marble columns and the golden mosaics fades from our minds. There is only the dark. The palace sleeps. The emperor sleeps. The guards wait. The water waits. The stone waits. And as the moon begins its slow descent towards the western horizon, marking the passage of the silent hours, we too can let go. The history is written. The stones are set. There is nothing left to do but drift. Drift into the quiet. Drift into the dark. Drift into the history. Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.